Good evening and welcome to the Planning Commission meeting of Monday, March 11, 2024. I now call the meeting to order. And if everyone would stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, we'll go ahead and say it together. After me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you, everyone. Anna, roll call, please.
Chair Arith.
Present.
Vice Chair Toller.
Here.
Commissioner Rojas.
Here.
Commissioner Zick is absent. Commissioner Andrade.
Here.
Commissioner Vivar.
Present.
Commissioner Klepak.
Present.
All right, thank you, Anna. I don't see any announcements or presentations at this time, which brings us to public comments for matters that are not listed on tonight's agenda. So if you'd like to speak, you're welcome to come to either podium. You'll have 3 minutes, and at the 1 minute mark, you hear a little chime. And then at 3 minutes, you get cut off. And I promise it's not me cutting you off. It just does it automatically. If you're on Zoom, you can use the raised hand option, or if you're on telephone, you can press *9 to put yourself in the queue. Would anyone in the public like to speak on a matter not listed on tonight's agenda?
I don't know. You can tell me if I'm right or wrong. But the agenda, I guess, is the building thing tonight.
No, that's actually not on our agenda. We have a school item and we have a pedestrian item tonight.
Okay, I can speak.
Yes, ma'am.
The thing that I want to speak on is the building that they want to put on the senior center, Jamboree. And actually, I'm not for it at all because we won't have any light in the senior center. It will cut off all of our light. We won't have any parking either. It's the only senior center that the builders are going after. And there's no pluses in it at all. The only plus in it is for the builders that will pull $47 million off of our government to start building it. But they have built in, I understand, I think it's Irvine, and that place is a total mess, so people tell me that are coming out of it. I haven't checked into it or gone to it, but that is such a small parking lot. We didn't even have room when they were voting, and the city uses it a lot when you come in for a special event. And it is a senior center, so people come and go. And so it is full sometimes, and it's all the time, back and forth. And I guess what I want to ask is how many permits have they gotten through Orange County, this building Jamboree, and what are the permits? Because I am into Orange County. I was a real estate person, and I did a division all by myself. So I know the permits that they have to pull up. They'll be digging our parking lot all up. We will have no place to go. And no, I do not want them in there for any reason. There's too much land. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Wolf. Anyone else in chambers wish to speak on an item not listed on tonight's agenda? All right, seeing none. Anna, if we go on to Zoom or telephone?
No, there's not, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you very much. I'll go ahead and close public comments. Go to Planning Commissioner comments, starting with Commissioner Klepak.
I just wanted to note, I saw that there was a call put out for anybody interested in serving on a city committee, that the deadline is March 18th, just about a week away. And appointments will happen at the April 2nd City Council meeting. So any interest in animal services, active transportation, finance and pension, housing and public service grants, or mobile home park advisory committees, it's a really good way to get engaged with the city. That's it.
All right, thank you. It seems like we have the whole kit and caboodle open. Commissioner Vivar.
Yeah, just wanted to thank the public for being here tonight, for Ms. Wolf providing her public comment. And I'd also like to echo Chair Arith's comments from 2 weeks ago, thanking Councilmember Don Harper for his service and Don, it's been a great pleasure working with you, and sad to see you go. So thank you all for being here tonight again, and I look forward to a great meeting.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Vivar. Commissioner Rojas.
I have no comments.
All right, thank you, sir. Commissioner Andrade.
None at the moment, thank you.
All right, sure. Vice Chair.
No comments.
All right, and I have no comments either, which brings us to our consent calendar. I see we have one consent calendar item tonight. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered to be routine and will be acted upon in one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the Planning Commission, staff, or the public request specific items to be discussed and/or removed from the consent calendar for discussion. Items removed from the consent calendar will be discussed and voted upon immediately following Planning Commission action on the remainder of the consent calendar. And Anna, if you would, please read the title.
Consent calendar item number 1, February 12th, 2024, unofficial meeting minutes.
All right, thank you. Colleagues, do you have any comments on the meeting minutes? All right, seeing none, may I have a motion? Motion made, you might want to hit it again, Commissioner Vivar. Motion made by Commissioner Vivar. What's your motion?
Approve. the
Okay,
minutes.
is there a second? Any, seconded by Commissioner Rojas. Any discussion?
Nope.
All right, Commissioner Rojas?
Done.
All right, Anna, if we call the question.
That motion carries 6-0.
All right, thank you, Anna. This brings us to public hearings. I see we have 2 this evening, and Anna, if you would, please read the title for public hearing item number 1.
Public hearing item number 1, planning application 23-15 for a conditional use permit to renovate and expand Christ Lutheran Church and School located at 760 Victoria Street. Please note we have received public comments on this item that have been provided to the commission and made a part of the record. This is a call for any ex parte communications.
All right, thank you, Anna. I'll start to my right. Commissioner Rojas, any ex parte? Commissioner Andrade?
None.
Vice Chair? No. Commissioner?
No.
Vivar? No. And Commissioner Klepak?
No.
I do have one to report. I held a brief call today with David Haithcock at the chamber, only because he and I both went to Christ Lutheran, him a few years ahead of me. Believe it or not, everyone, I actually brought in my yearbook. Yeah, 1989, 1990, and there's Adam Arith, unwitting and young, right there. So with that said, yeah, thank you. So with that said, I just want to mention that for the record that I did go there, but I'm in no way biased on this item. So we'll move along. I'll now turn it over to Mr. Villalobos to present the item. Mr. Villalobos.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Gabriel Villalobos, and I am an Assistant Planner with the Development Services Department presenting Planning Application 23-15, which is a CUP application to allow for the renovation and expansion of an existing school named Christ Lutheran in the R1 zone. The project site is located at 760 Victoria Street, which is located approximately 300 feet to the east of the intersection of Placentia Avenue and Victoria Street. The project site is currently developed with an existing church and school, which includes a preschool as well as grades kindergarten through 8th. The project site includes a sanctuary building, a preschool building, a 2-story administrative building, a fireside building, a 2-story classroom building, a gym building with attached classroom and kitchen areas. The project site is accessed via 2 driveway approaches with the primary entrance off of Victoria Street and a rear gated entrance on Congress Street, which remains closed for the majority of the day. The subject property is Zone R1 or Single Family Residential and is surrounded by similarly zoned R1 properties located to the north, east, and south, each of which are improved with detached single-family homes. Properties generally located to the west have several different zoning designations, including the R2MD zone, which is improved with apartment buildings, the R1 zone, which is occupied by Canopy Church, and the C1 zone, which contains several uses such as a convenience store, a 5-bay self-service car wash, a laundromat, and Pacific Saging, which is an interior design business. In addition, the project is not located within any designated specific plan area. As indicated in Costa Mesa Municipal Code Land Use Table 13-30, schools including primary, secondary, and colleges are conditionally permitted in the R1 zone. Modifications to a school, which is considered a non-residential use in the R1 single-family residential district, are also subject to the approval of a CUP by the Planning Commission. In addition, per Costa Mesa Municipal Code, Section 13-32, building height and the number of stories for a non-residential use, in this case the school's gymnasium building, are also subject to the approval of a conditional use permit. The proposal includes the addition of 3,078 square feet of enclosed space to the second floor of the gymnasium, including a 2,000 square foot mezzanine, a 108 square foot office, and 970 square feet of storage with additional circulation space, as well as a 400 square foot addition for classroom space on the first floor of the building. To accommodate these changes, the slope for a portion of the existing gymnasium's roof line will be modified and several new clerestory windows will be added. The only structure impacted by these proposals will be the gym building. An open-air concourse will be added to attach the newly developed second floor area to the adjacent structures, including the administration building and classroom building, but those structures will not be altered through this application. 4 outdoor areas will be created through this proposal, including a cafe seating area, 2 lunch areas, and an outdoor meeting area, and all will be centrally located on campus. The maximum building height will not be increased, and only the eastern portion of the gym building will be redeveloped. The surface parking lot includes 192 striped parking spaces and 68 overflow spaces, which are located on the playing field on campus. No other changes are proposed as part of the CUP. The student enrollment will remain at a maximum of 410 students, and all other school activities will remain unchanged. Shown here is the site plan for the project site. As previously mentioned, the site has primary access along Victoria Street, which is where most vehicular traffic into and out of the site is situated. The gym building is centrally located on the campus, with the nearest residentially zoned properties located at least 130 feet to the east of the proposed area of renovation. Referencing the plan in the slide above, the area where the proposed cafe is to be located is currently existing as a classroom, and through this application, that classroom will be reconfigured into the cafe, with the existing kitchen then becoming classroom space. The northeastern portion of the gym building footprint will be increased with 400 additional square feet to accommodate the 4 825 square foot classrooms proposed. In addition, a new covered lunch area will be incorporated into the building features under where the new mezzanine concourse is proposed, with 2 new exterior staircases added as well. No changes are proposed to any parking or recreational areas located on the site. Shown here is a proposed floor plan layout for the first floor of the proposed gym building renovation. Currently, a detached covered lunch shelter exists along with 3 attached classrooms and kitchen facility, in addition to an attached fireside building which will remain untouched. The existing lunch area will be removed and incorporated into the design of the building, while the kitchen and classroom areas will be reconfigured to add an additional classroom and to allow for an outdoor seating area to be attached to the new cafe. Shown here is the floor plan layout for the second floor of the gym building. The gym building is currently 1 story, so all second floor additions would be new, including the office, storage area, mezzanine, outdoor meeting area, and covered lunch area. In addition, circulation is provided with open air concourses that are attached to the adjacent administration and classroom buildings. These portions of the proposed new construction, which are not fully enclosed, are not considered as part of the overall floor area ratio for the project. This includes both the covered lunch area and the covered meeting area, as both will be open on at least 2 sides. Shown on the slide above are the existing elevations for the project site. The highest existing structure on the property is shown as a sanctuary building, which has a height of 36 feet. In addition, the adjacent administration building has a height of 30 feet, while the two-story classroom building has a height of 22 feet. The current maximum gym height is shown as 26 feet 4 inches, as measured from the top of the ridgeline to the finished grade. This height will not be modified through this request and will be in line with the heights of other existing structures on site. Shown above are the proposed elevations for the gym building. As mentioned previously, the gym's ridgeline height of 26 feet 4 inches will not be modified through this request, as only the eastern portion of the gym building, along with the slope of the roof, will be changed to accommodate the new requested features. The new height of the eave on the eastern portion of the gym will be approximately 22 feet in height, and the renovated facade will include a mix of stucco, brick, and stone veneers, as well as large structural supports to create a contemporary architectural style that will include clerestory windows at the highest points of the structure to allow natural light into the building. Portions of the facade will be enclosed with windows, and other portions shall remain open air but covered by the roof structure. Shown in the slide above are some photos taken from my site visit on January 25th. Photo 1 shows the eastern portion of the existing gym building where 3 classrooms and the kitchen facility currently are located. Photo 2 shows the indoor basketball court which shall remain as part of the gym building. And photo 3 shows the entrance of the existing fireside building that is attached to the building to be renovated and is used as a meeting room. Project-specific conditions of approval have been added to the application to address some potential concerns that may result from the approval of this project. These conditions include limitations on enrollment numbers, requirements to maintain on-site parking, a request for no modifications to be done to the approved facade and structural height without planning approval, maintaining existing landscaping, a requirement for a lot line adjustment, as well as a requirement for a minor conditional use permit for the allowance of temporary classrooms during construction. Prior to tonight's hearing, staff received 1 public comment which was forwarded to all commissioners for your consideration. With that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution to find that the project is categorically exempt from the provisions of CEQA per CEQA Guidelines 15301 for existing facilities, and to approve planning application 23-15 subject to the conditions of approval. This concludes staff's presentation, and I'm available to answer any questions. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Mr. Villalobos. It's a great presentation. Colleagues, questions of staff? All right, I believe I have a few. You just bear with me. For public knowledge, Mr. Villalobos, can you remind us of the current student population and if it's going to adjust through approval of this theoretically?
So the current enrollment is 350 students. The maximum allowed, which was previously approved through another conditional use permit, allows for a maximum of 410 students. So through this approval, the school will be able to feasibly add an additional 60 students to the current enrollment.
Okay, thank you, sir. Maybe 1 or 2 more. If we turn to page 8, look at the paragraph just above title school operations. At the end of that paragraph, it said, determined through a traffic study to not result in substantial impacts to local traffic and circulation. Can we talk about that a little bit more? If we foresee that student enrollment is going up, did the applicant not reach the threshold for a traffic impact study then?
So the current student enrollment of 410 was previously approved through a previous conditional use permit. At the time, a condition of approval was submitted requiring that the school, after the approval, come back and perform a traffic study. This study assumed a maximum enrollment of 410 students. As such, transportation along with planning concurred that the traffic study's conclusions would be still applicable today.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Villalobos. If we turn to page 9, looking at the bottom of the landscaping, or I'm sorry, at the beginning of the parking section, it says, "The site is developed with 192 surface parking spaces and is also permitted to provide 68 additional spaces during church service." To me, that math comes out to 260, but I believe in the applicant letter, it said that they had 269 on page 2. So I don't know if that discrepancy is somehow, we need to address that discrepancy.
That would just be a typo. The correct number should be 192 currently. That's the count that I had counted based off of the plans.
Okay.
And the plans would indicate 260 total, including those 68 overflow spaces. So the applicant letter was just a typo.
I'm pretty sure 9 is next to 0 on a keyboard, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Possibly. All right, thank you. Let me just turn a couple pages here. I think that's all for now. If I have other questions, I'll come back to it. But colleagues, if you feel like jumping in, Commissioner Vivar?
Yeah, I do have a question. So when reading the staff report, something stuck out to me that in 2009, when Planning Commission reviewed this, the decision was appealed. So was that the applicant appealing the the Planning Commission decision to City Council, and why? What was the reasoning for that appeal?
So I believe the reason for the request for appeal was actually some adjacent residences who had some concerns regarding some of the proposals for the project. Ultimately, the project went back to City Council and a few modifications were made to that application. One of which specifically had to do with the height of the proposed building. There was a variance being requested, requesting a height of 33 feet, which was ultimately revised to a maximum height of 30. There were some other changes as well, one of which included the request for the traffic study to be completed to study or analyze potential impacts to the residential streets adjacent to the project site. Ultimately, though, the project was approved with some modified conditions.
Right, and I'm guessing that traffic study from 2009 had shown that at least at the time there would have been no impacts to the residential areas.
So the study concluded ultimately that, well, just to backtrack a little bit, the purpose of the study was to determine whether or not the gate on the rear of the property at Congress Street should remain open or not. Ultimately, the study had concluded that having the gate permanently closed would actually produce a negative impact, specifically along Victoria Street, where all traffic into and out of the site would have to be funneled through. So it was to the benefit of the project as well as the adjacent residential streets to maintain the Congress Street as a point of ingress and egress onto the site. Ultimately, the study also concluded that the level of service for the residential streets, the margin of improvement was minimal compared to what the potential negative effects would have been if the gate were to be permanently closed for Victoria Street.
So to this day, that gate remains open, right? Not closed?
The gate is only temporarily open daily for, I believe, period of 30 minutes in the morning as well in the afternoon. I would defer to the applicants to confirm that. Sure. But generally, from what I understand, they open the rear gate for a period of 30 minutes or so to allow late arrivals to enter the site.
And this is for school purposes, I'm guessing, right?
Yes, this would be strictly for school.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I think that's it for me, and thank you, Mr. Villalobos.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Vivar. Anyone else before we move on? Commissioner Andrade?
Yeah, can you expand a little bit about the condition for approval on page 9 regarding landscaping?
Would this be in regards to the request for a landscape review or for the replacement of trees?
Both, yeah.
For both?
Would be great, yeah.
So essentially, the project is located within the R1 zone. As such, it's exempt from the landscaping requirements of the Costa Mesa Municipal Code. Ultimately, though, we are requesting, since some modifications will take place during construction as far as the removal of certain landscaped areas, we'd like to further review that at the time construction documents are submitted so we can confirm that the number of trees specifically will be maintained on site. We did request that certain mature trees not be removed during construction, but some of the smaller ones may need to be potentially replanted. But we would review that further at the time building permits are applied for.
And along those lines, is there an opportunity? One of the public comments that we receive are of neighbors that live along Congress and Wallace. Is there opportunities there or any consideration of adding landscaping there to kind of protect visibility and noise filtering?
So there haven't been any prior discussions regarding the potential for additional landscaping along that street frontage. Ultimately, we only did receive this comment just today, so that would require some further discussions with the applicants. I'm sure they would be amenable to possible solutions. But ultimately, the project site, at least where the redevelopment is to take place, it's located somewhere around 300 feet or so away from that closest residential street. So staff's opinion is that potential noise and sight lines would be mitigated simply based off of the distance and separation.
Absolutely. So now, having in consideration some community feedback, yeah, would it be great to reevaluate that opportunity, and also, again, to kind of stay in line with our friends at the Parks Commission, as much as possible, limit any opportunity, any instance of removing existing trees. We are tree city, especially this area is so heavily. I think I'm right around. In the other direction here, so I know Victoria Street corridor is heavily trafficked by foot, so providing a little shade for our neighbors along that path would be absolutely welcome. Even, I know right now I'm talking about Congress and Wallace, but just an opportunity for, again, support us along the mission of becoming Tree City, keeping our city as cool as possible. It looks like you have such a beautiful and great campus. So there may, I invite you all to consider opportunities to help us build our count for more trees to keep our cities cool. Be great.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Andrade. We can certainly circle back to this when we get to the motion. Anyone else? All right, seeing none. Mr. Villalobos, thank you very much. I'll now open the public hearing and ask the applicant or the applicant's representative to come to the podium. And if you would, please state your name for the record. Let us know if you've read the staff report and the conditions of approval, and let us know if you've agreed to them.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Drew Ross. I have been able to read the application and what was the other document of approval? Is that what it was called?
The conditions of approval?
Conditions of approval. I was able to read through. That.
Okay. And do you agree to the conditions of approval?
Certainly agree.
All right. Thank you. The floor is yours if you'd like to make a brief presentation.
Thank you very much. Again, my name is Drew Ross. I serve as the lead pastor of Christ Lutheran Church and School right here in Costa Mesa. I'm also a resident of Costa Mesa and enjoy being incredibly active in this city that my family gets to call home. Christ Lutheran Church has been able to call Costa Mesa home for 71 years. Our school has been able to call Costa Mesa home for 66 years. And because of those who have come before us, I have noticed it being difficult to go about anywhere in Orange County and not meet someone who has been impacted by our community of people that we call Christ Lutheran. We are an organization that absolutely loves to be involved in our local community while also keeping our eyes on ways that we can be impactful around the world. As a matter of fact, one of our value statements at Christ Lutheran is that we act locally and impact globally. Therefore, you've likely seen our people serving around Costa Mesa, serving with Trellis or Love Costa Mesa Serve Day, Project Hope Alliance, Habitat for Humanity, multiple homeless initiatives, Wilson Elementary School, OC Rescue Mission, concerts in the park, our monthly food distribution efforts, and the list goes on and on. But tonight, let me share with you a bit about our goal. The goal that Christ Lutheran has in mind, which is why we find ourselves here today, is that we need to make improvements to our campus so that we can continue the mission that we are on. As you've heard multiple times, we're not looking at adding to the height of our campus, but instead we are looking to accomplish is a beautification project of our current campus with an increased use of indoor and outdoor spaces. Once upon a time, schools were able to function with a smaller amount of square footage per student, and it's now a value of schools to allow for more creative spaces and room for students to learn in collaborative and thought-provoking spaces. And so tonight, here's what you will expect to hear even more of. Tonight, you'll expect to hear from our resident architect, Mr. James Cleveland. You'll also hear from our principal, Robbie Boslow. And as you hear from them, please pay attention to how we desire to add indoor square footage through the use of a second-level mezzanine space that will also be able to interact with our existing gym space. Please also pay attention to the enhancements that will be able to be accomplished by rebuilding some of our existing classrooms that are part of the oldest portion of our facility. Finally, I hope that you get excited about the outdoor spaces that will be able to be created that will allow for people to interact with one another in gathering spaces that are not confined to indoors, as we too appreciate the trees that are in the area, and I love the advice that we've already received tonight of honoring those trees that we already have. We feel that with the addition of these intentional spaces on our campus, Christ Lutheran will be able to continue in our mission of serving our community through the efforts of our church, our school, and by all those who use our campus regularly, from scouts to sports team to AA groups and multiple family events. Tonight, what I hope you will hear from us over and over again is we desire connections and encounters with one another, with our community, and of course with you as well. And let me introduce to you our principal, Robbie Boslow, and our architect, James Cleveland.
All right, thank you very much, Pastor Ross. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hey, good evening. My name is James Cleveland. I'm the architect this evening, and
my name is Robbie Boslow. I serve as the principal at Christ Lutheran Church and School. I have read the conditions of approval, and I have agreed to them.
fantastic. Well, first off, I just want to thank Gabriel for doing such a commendable job at carrying us through, so we greatly appreciate your service here. And transparency, I did not go to school at Christ Lutheran, but my kids do, and my wife and I are both members of the church over there. So we've been members of this community for about 15 years, and so it brings me great pride to be able to step up here and help and support the church and school here, not as a commission, but as a service, you know, because we've got amazing leadership over here at the school, and we've got a tremendous voice, which you just heard over there at the church side of things. So I'd like to just architecturally walk you through a little of the things that we were negotiating here. And Gabriel, if you'd take us through. All right, so obviously you've got some existing photography of what we call the plaza over there. So actually, if you'd take one step back, if you would, for a second. Are you able to go back there? Yeah. So this is the most telling image of the, I think, entire project. So you're looking at the central plaza here, and you see the church doors on the left-hand side of the screen, and what you see in the lower foreground is the cafe. And this is not a cafeteria for the school, but this is a greeting area for the church. And so this is the one component of the gym expansion that we are leaning on to serve the church campus area. But the rest of the project we'll walk you through is exclusively for the school. So if you take us to the next, please, Gabriel. All right. And of course, as you well know, everything will comply with all ordinances and building code. Next, please. So what you're seeing over here is a glance taken from the northeast corner, as though you were a neighbor just peering up over your fence at what you might hope to see. And that's what we hope to do, is create these connections and encounters and be a good neighbor. You heard about the 60 and 70 years of service this church and school have done to the community, and we just look to enhance that. You'll see some symbology of the three cross symbols in the foreground, creating this great monumental structural component. You see a lot of contemporary glass, and we're looking to bring daylighting all the way in through the classrooms and into the gymnasium space. Next, please. I think we're going to talk around some operational things here, Robbie.
A quick intro. I've been serving at Christ Lutheran Church and School as the principal for the past 2.5 years, and as you have heard from Pastor Ross and Mr. Cleveland, it is an incredible community, one that I am happy to hear alum being represented all over Costa Mesa, so that's great news. When it comes to the impact, yes, we want to be good neighbors. We want to make sure that our community stays safe. And so when we think about traffic considerations, that's something that we take very seriously. We have revised the way that we do arrival and dismissal throughout the week to make sure that we can accommodate kids safely, to keep any cars that might back up off of Victoria. We recognize that that is a possible hazard, and there's no way that we want to allow that to happen. So we have changed the way that we do dismissal so that we have double car lanes when we have our heaviest traffic patterns during the day. In addition, we also have several staff members and volunteers that are out in the mornings. At least 4 people are out every morning providing supervision in the parking lot. And at dismissal, we have roughly 14 people outside making sure that we are providing an appropriate supervision and keeping people safe. So, next slide, please. When it comes to the impact on construction, yes, we want to also be good neighbors. We will follow all city codes and recommendations. We can see that the cost of, or the timeline of construction will be roughly 18 months. And we are hoping to minimize the noise from construction that would be happening in the neighborhood. But of course, there will be building construction noises just like there would be for anything, and we recognize that.
I will add to that, we have another exhibit talking about the phasing of construction, which we'll address in a moment. But the goal, there it is. So the goal would be, and we'll get back to Robbie in a moment here, the goal would be to, upon approval, initiate construction in the summer months of 2025. And we acknowledge it's approximately an 18-month construction schedule working around the school schedule and sequencing. So what you can see over here is the blue area outlining the main areas of work. The pink areas being a latter phase where we address some modernization and renovation to the classrooms. And one of the items Gabriel brought up earlier being that the staging of the temporary portable classroom facilities, those green boxes to the top, Project West of the package. So this is the intention here. So approximately 18-month construction schedule.
Gabriel, can you go back one slide, please? Thank you. It has been mentioned that we are currently at 350 students with the ability to go up to 410 students. So of course, our hope with this renovation would be that we would be able to get 60 more students. When it comes to noise that we might hear in the community and what that impact might be, what we're not saying is that there would be 60 students all within one grade level, and then they're going to go out there and just hoop and holler and get really, really loud. That's going to be 60 students across the spectrum from kindergarten through 8th grade. In terms of how we provide for lunch and recess in the safest way possible, as we have grade level bands, primary, intermediate, and middle school that rotate through, so that way it makes sense, right? We want kids to be safe out there, to enjoy the company of one another, so that kindergartners are not playing football with 8th graders. We're not going to allow that. So when it comes to 60 students, we're talking about that spread out over 3 different lunch periods or recess times, which is really 20 students, which on a day in which we experience sickness in our school, that difference is negligible when it comes to outside noise. So we see practically no change whatsoever when it comes to the noise outside with the addition of 60 students.
All right. Forward a couple more, please. This exhibit here is, I think, helpful in that it touches, again, a little bit about construction phasing and sequencing, but you can also see a little bit about the lunch area. So if you look in the bottom right-hand corner of the blue structure, this is where the lunch areas occur. And there's actually 3 specialized seating areas, which, you've got a seat wall, you've got a little bit of a canopy structure where you can create an under canopy first story lunch area, and then you have a second story lunch area. So you can really spread some of your student lunch hours apart. If you can move to the next, please. Again, we talked about, this was the mission of the campus. As the architect, this is what we were trying to create, is a concept, and the concept being creating those connections and encounters. Next, please. Connecting people to Jesus is the mission of the campus here, and the mission of the architect was to use the gym as an organizing element to the rest of the campus here. So it's going to cater towards the lunch sequencing, the gym activities, and the campus has got great sports and rec programs here. So I look forward to seeing how they continue to grow over the course of time here. And indoor and outdoor encounters. As we know, we can do more indoor meeting and outdoor meeting spaces as well as lunch space. So if you go to the next, please. And here, now you can see some of the linear circulation patterns here. So what additionally we're trying to do is create a second story closed loop. So kind of the salmon colored, I don't know, it looks like a number 9 if you look at it in plan. What you're doing is you're creating a connection between the existing campus elevator throughout the gym and all the way around to the remaining areas of the classroom buildings as well. So I think we're addressing accessibility through this closed loop as well. Next, please. And you heard about acting locally and impacting globally, and what we also talk about there is having an out and in and an up, and having the gymnasium being an open-air gymnasium where you can get natural ventilation and circulation in and up, and then create a second-story viewing platform to look down upon the basketball and volleyball facility is another opportunity here. We use the word mezzanine, and mezzanine was one of our greatest opportunities to increase without significant impact to the FAR. And what we're doing is we're creating multi-purpose spaces up on the second story there. And we look forward to seeing how that can impact our school. Next, please. We've been through the site plan. I think the only other thing that may be of particular interest here is if you look at it from south to north, from the left side of the screen over to the right side of the screen, the campus is about 600 feet long, and you have about 5 feet of fall across the campus here. And navigating the building heights was, of course, a primary objective to us. And so, again, and we say it, that the gymnasium building maximum ridge height will not change in any way. What would look to impact here, we talked about landscaping, and if you recall the blue outlined area of the gymnasium building and the new wing of classroom buildings, we're looking to go about 10 feet outside of the building envelope where we would do some form of enhancement to the paving. We would bring in some new landscaping, so flat work and landscape all together. Next, please. This is a view of the front facade of the campus. And again, just to really reinforce that the building height will not change, what you're looking at is the front facade of the church to the right, that being at 36 feet tall. And then you're seeing the preschool building to the left, that left wing. And there's a little gray box that's peeping out above the top of that up to about 30 feet. And so that's the existing administration building. What you see shaded in the background there, that's the maximum peak of what our gym and expansion would be. And again, you will never notice that. No observer could possibly see that from Victoria. Next, please. We've walked through the exhibits for the elevations here, and again, just reinforcing that, we are looking to enhance with landscape and trees, maximize daylighting, bring in more ventilation, natural ventilation, etc. Next, please. And this is, I think, a fun view. We've activated the space with the kids, and in fact, it's not, we wouldn't have known it way back then, but we just secured funding to upgrade the gymnasium flooring. So as a campus, we're really excited to see about this change come about. So we're really, really looking forward to the second story mezzanine opportunity. Next, please. And then we close out here with an overview of, what the parking sequence and look like, and what the impacts to the neighboring community would be. So I believe the next slide is from our town. Okay, nope, not yet. We're looking in from the plaza level up onto the second-story open-air outdoor meeting space, which is, again, a creative use to not increase our FAR, but do provide outdoor meeting spaces for both church and school. And then lastly, we talked about those lunch spaces, and I think this is one of the areas that will impact the school on a daily basis most. So you see at the first story there, that first story lunch space, and then you see a second story lunch area, and then you see the cascading seat wall as you're coming down, with that really clever canopy overhang. These are the areas that we anticipate, again, will be frequently used for meeting spaces and for lunch spaces. If you know the campus at all, you know that on rainy days there is no opportunity for the kids to go outside, but with functionally covered outdoor lunch spaces like this, kids could continue to eat their lunches outdoors. Next, please. And last, we conclude with a little bit of our town hall. Back in November, we hosted a town hall, invited the neighboring community in to come and learn a little bit more about our project, so we weren't offending them for the first time while coming in and presenting to commission here. So Pastor Drew started with a great introduction. If you go to the next slide, please. Both Robbie and myself talked about both the architecture and the operational side of things. And again, as you see from the Q&A highlights down below, the questions were asked about phasing of construction and noise, about acoustics and environmental impact, and then about traffic. And again, I think Principal Boslow's recommendations to continue to improve upon the flow of traffic in and around the campus, but we heard loud and clear the neighbors' request to minimize noise. And again, we didn't solve anything, but what we do know is that through use of acoustic environmental engineers, we can introduce things like green screening and white noise machines, on the noisiest days. And there are some great celebrations which happen out on that sports field. There's music, there's celebrations, there's people on loudspeakers. So those are the days I think most impacted, or that would most impact the neighbors. And maybe a white noise machine might be the solution. And I think that concludes our presentation for this evening. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Cleveland, and Principal Boslow. Thank you for your time as well. Colleagues, do you have any questions for the applicant following that presentation? Commissioner Vivar.
Yeah, so thank you for your presentation. And I believe it was Mr. Boslow who mentioned this, about something about the driveway operating a bit differently. Mm-hmm. Would you mind explaining a bit further in terms of what you mean by like how that driveway is supposed to normally operate and how it operates under special circumstances?
You bet. I'm trying to find real fast what slide might give us an overview. Mr. Villalobos, will you go back just a little bit? How about right up, go forward a little bit? That one. How about that? All right, so you can see that coming off of Victoria on our left-hand side, we have a pretty long, narrow road, right? And then we can, sorry?
Yes.
Okay. And so there is a gate that we have for our own security purposes because we use the outside area, right, as a playground. So we open that gate, and that's one of the things that we have found, is that we are trying to balance the use of space when it comes to students playing on the playground, as well as knowing that our highest, or one of our highest traffic times is the span from roughly 2:50 to 3:15, in which the majority of our students are picked up. And so what we've done is, as people are coming off of Victoria, they will not be coming off of Congress, by the way. Let me interject on myself. On the far right-hand side of this image is Congress. That is not opened up until right before 3 o'clock to minimize the amount of traffic flow in the neighborhood. So, again, the vast majority of our traffic pattern, or traffic, comes in from Victoria. Then we open up that gate, and you can see this long parking lot. So as people come through Victoria, imagine they continue horizontally from left to right, making their way almost all the way down to Congress, and then they take a left, and then they come back around. So we're double stacking the cars on either side of that parking lot, and then students are on the field if they are younger grades to ensure safety, and then we have students in the middle of the parking lot. In those parking spaces is basically where students are. There's a crosswalk that you can faintly see coming off of the gym area, making its way into the parking lot, where we have a pedestrian guard, if you will, stopping and allowing traffic to proceed. So again, very safe. In the 2.5 years that I've been principal there, we have not had a single accident. Praying for no more accidents in the future as well, or no accidents in the future. So this change where we went from a single to a double structure has really helped us out in terms of maximizing the amount of cars that we can get. Now, we also only have roughly 6 minutes, 7 minutes tops where there is maybe a significant, I don't even want to say significant, where there's an issue where we might back up to the actual gate. So kind of that green spot in the center of the parking lot where it's the bigger section, kind of in the middle, again, that gate area right there is we have 2 people helping monitor traffic as cars come in, as cars leave, and then as preschool families who need to park and then go into a different part of the building can grab their kiddos. So that is really only needed for about 6 minutes. After that, we're fine.
Right. So since your traffic starts about 2:50, you said you keep the Congress driveway closed. So I'm guessing for those 10 minutes, then Victoria functions as a two-way driveway. The vehicles are coming in and out of that driveway, right, for the pickups?
Our dismissal starts at 3, so basically it's an incoming flow, if I'm understanding your question correctly. Yes, and so it is incoming. There's not really an outflow onto Victoria until 3 o'clock. So we start receiving cars at around 2:45. Off of Victoria. We will then open up the Congress gate at roughly 2:55, but for the most part, traffic does not enter off of that.
Right. And then that crosswalk that you say you use on campus, is that kind of like big stripes, like white stripes, or what is that?
That is correct. There is, you can again faintly see it right there. We just repaved or resurfaced our parking lot this past year, and yes, in bright yellow, it's right there.
Right. Okay. I don't think I have any other questions, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your answers. Appreciate it.
You bet.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Vivar. Just quick question for the applicant. Does the church still own the residence at the far right bottom corner, just below the parking lot?
Yes, it does.
Okay, all right. Colleagues, any further questions? All right, seeing none, thank you very much. Yeah, Commissioner Andrade.
If you can expand a little bit about the noise mitigation. You mentioned a white noise machine. I'm just familiar with the ones you use at nighttime. So and you mentioned to maybe mitigate big events that take place in the back. So what does that look like?
Yeah, very good. Thank you for the question here. So I am not an acoustical engineer. We do work with them on occasion, and they would have better solutions for you here. But what we know is that you can bring in white noise machines, which it sounds like a TV running in the background, and what it does is it helps to mitigate some of the noise that the neighbors could impact, or experience, I should say. So I would have to lean on an acoustical engineer for that.
So any thoughts on the recommendation of expanding some of your green space in the back along the abutting areas to residential to, continue to be neighborly?
Yeah, within the property line, what we're trying to do, and we were tasked with, was to preserve the mature trees. So first and foremost, preserve the mature trees. And then secondly, with a landscape eye in mind here, come in and enhance the landscape as much as possible.
Jump in.
Yeah.
On the right side of the screen, which is the north part of the property, you can see that there are a couple of large trees that go along that tree line there on Congress. To my understanding, I've seen pictures of years ago that actually used to have more of a line of trees right there. And there seem to even be indicators on the ground that once upon a time there were more trees there. There's space for it there. So one of my first thoughts, even when hearing these ideas, is that I don't imagine it'd be an issue for us to relook at putting a couple of more trees on that north part of the property, especially that would prohibit sight lines from down at Wallace and hopefully even sound waves there as well. But we seem to have the space, especially because 2 trees already allow for it.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, that's a really great feedback, especially hearing from local neighbors from that area who seem to, again, emphasize that somehow it projects. So you must be having some really fun parties. But yeah, and then again, also the invitation to consider additional landscaping along Victoria to continue to provide a shade to local residents. I mean, that's actually one of the next agenda items, right? We're talking about the walkability of our city. So that would be a great opportunity, given your wonderful campus. Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Andrade. Anyone else? Commissioner Klupak.
Yeah, I was just thinking where those trees are, a hedge line might be a little bit more effective in terms of noise than like tree trunks there would be. But I think where the neighbor's issue may be coming from is off the parking lot where the gate is. And that might be an area to consider, some kind of screen or something. Because I think in the comment it said it was coming from the chapel, and then looks like it's going down the pavement that's in the parking lot to Wallace. So maybe we could give some thought to that area where the gate is.
Yeah, we can certainly circle back to that later. Thank you, Commissioner Klepak. Anyone else? All right, seeing none. All right, thank you very much. I appreciate it. We'll now open I will now open for public comments. If you'd like to speak to this item, you're welcome to come to either podium. You'll have 3 minutes, and at the 1 minute mark, you'll hear a little chime and you'll get cut off at the 3 minutes. So we'll start here in chambers and then we'll move on to Zoom and telephone. Starting with you, ma'am.
Hi there. My name is Karen Johnson. I am a resident of Costa Mesa for 17 years now, going on 18. I am also a parent of a student over at Christ Lutheran. We've been there for several years now. Christ Lutheran has been a huge pillar to our community. They reach out, like they said, act locally, affect globally. We do food distributions. We provide spaces for Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, and several other German classes are taken at our campus. And with this remodel, it would provide us a better gym for our students to play in and also give us the space to continue to grow and affect the community. That's all.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone else in chambers wish to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Cami Mendez, and I have been a part of Christ School and Church for over 2 years. My son goes there. We love it. What they do to the community is amazing. Let them do whatever they need to do because they just are a wonderful place, and they offer so many great things for so many people that could really use that meeting space. So I wish them luck.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone else in chambers? All right, seeing none. Anna, if we go on to Zoom or telephone.
No, there's not, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you very much. I'll go ahead and close public comment portion of the public hearing and ask commissioners if you have any further questions for the applicant. All right, seeing none. Does the applicant have any closing comments before we move on? You can opt in, opt out, whatever. Yes, Pastor.
I won't take time, but I would just simply like to say this. We had planned just to thank you. What a wonderful opportunity to stand in front of you as civic leaders that we enjoy working with. So thank you for allowing us the opportunity and the time to be here tonight. We love having the opportunity to educate young people, and I think what you can see is while we've been blessed with a wonderful school, we don't want to just have any school. We want to have a fantastic, amazing school that represents the city that we love right here in Costa Mesa with the greatest of facilities. So thank you for hearing our ideas and contemplating what we put before you here tonight. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Pastor Drew. Commissioners, do you have any further questions for staff on this item? All right. Seeing none, I'll now close the public hearing and entertain a motion. Motion made by Vice Chair Toller. What's your motion, Vice Chair?
I'd like to move that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution to find that the project is exempt from CEQA, Section 15301, and approve Planning Commission Planning Application 2315 based on the findings.
Okay, and I seconded it, so you're welcome to talk to your motion.
Okay, no, sure, thank you. I think that this is obviously a quality project with professionals leading it. They're obviously interested in being good neighbors. Personally, I think from the perspective of somebody who's up here, because I think a lot about how cities and neighborhoods should function, and a neighborhood church is a critical component of that. I personally hate seeing churches repurposed or sold off in pieces because they're closing down. I think they're, regardless of the religious aspect of it, they're a key neighborhood amenity. And we're lucky to have a lot in Costa Mesa. I think the first civic building in Costa Mesa was the Methodist Church, right? That's how we were founded, kind of. But anyway, obviously a great project, and I think we should let them do this nice makeover.
All right, thank you, Vice Chair. I'm happy to support the motion. I'll start by saying what I said earlier. I went to kindergarten at this place, and I've got the cute little young pictures to prove it. I know from my own long-term experience, and even in asking my mom what her experience was like having me there, it was great for us. It provided a sense of community at a time where, I don't know if this is too much information, but when my parents split, my mom and I lived on Wilson Street, so it was within a stone's throw of where Mom and I were. And it wasn't until we moved just north of the 405 to the Wimbledon area that I went to Calvary Chapel, but it was at Christ Lutheran that we started my education effectively. I also know from someone who's a very dear friend and also a politician in this community, and I won't say exactly who they are, that they also went to this school at a time when their parents got divorced and had a working mom that worked a lot, and this person ended up using the extended hours of child service back in the late 80s, early 90s, at a time when their mom was working a lot. And it was also extremely affordable too, because I believe at that time there was a different tier pricing for single moms as well. So it's stories like these that have been going on for decades. And on top of that, I also know that Christ Lutheran has been a big supporter of trellis events. And I know in past years, I've been out on the field at the end of the Love Costa Mesa Day. And I believe you guys are even doing it again this year, right? Yeah. So when you think about community involvement, community engagement, and having a church, and like the Vice Chair said, regardless of the religious affiliation or theological affiliation, I think Christ Lutheran has demonstrated that in spades for a very long time, and I'm very happy to support this motion as written. So I'll pass it along to my colleagues. Would you like to speak to this as well, starting with Commissioner Rojas?
I'm going to second what you said there, Chair, that I have experienced different community events there at the church campus, and I'm very happy to see that you guys are taking an initiative to move forward on it. I'm really excited about the designs that you've come up with. I also want to see what that mezzanine does for your campus. Beautiful design, and I think it's a great time for you guys to update that. It's just going to be an exciting project. I mean, my children have gone and enjoyed events there at your campus. I learned what a trunk or treat was there at your campus as well, and I'm really excited for it. So I will be supporting your motion. I congratulate you on your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Rojas. Commissioner Andrade?
Yeah, happy to support this wonderful project and expansion to continue to provide services to our community. I would like to just ensure that in land use 310, that we incorporate the concerns about the noise mitigation, expanding on green space to provide some of that noise mitigation that our local neighbors have expressed concerns on. But otherwise, happy to support this project.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Vivar?
Yeah, I too am going to echo some of the sentiments on that. I think this seems like a great project. I don't really see concerns personally around neighborhood impacts or to traffic, for example. And the pastor did mention that there used to be more trees here. I'm sure that in light of some of the conversations we've had tonight here and Commissioner Andrade's comments, it would be great if the campus could explore some of the beautification aspects in terms of trees and green space, enhancing green space. So yeah, just thank you for presenting that tonight and for engaging with the community as well. I think the fact that you held a town hall shows that you are open to hearing the concerns of the community. So thank you for doing that and for presenting here tonight and answering all the questions. Thank you. I will be supporting the motion.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Vivar. Commissioner Klepak?
I'll pile on. This is a great project. Thank you for submitting it. I think it's a really fantastic use of space to just kind of pop up what you already have, and I'll be supporting it as well. Thank you.
All right, sounds great.
I love the daylighting for the school, too. That's very important for learning.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes for a healthy building, for sure. Just one point of clarification before we move on. In light of Commissioner Andrade and Commissioner Vivar's comments about additional landscaping, preserving trees, do we need to address that in the motion, or can we have staff tell us a little bit more about the process for noise mitigation and trees? Or I kind of, just to let you know, I kind of interpret the conditions of approval already catching this. So, Director, if you'd like to.
No, you beat me to that, Chair Arith. There's definitely a condition in and condition number 24 where it talks about mature trees be retained wherever possible. And certainly we could expand on that to say and to work with the applicant to put more in.
Okay. Commissioner Andrade, Commissioner Vivar, is that sufficient, or would you like to discuss anything further?
No, I think, right, I mean, I'm saying trees, but I'm not a landscaper. So whatever fits best in the space, just to, again, accommodate for some of that privacy that sounds like you guys can use and the noise mitigation concerns.
Okay. Commissioner
Yeah,
Vivar?
I agree. And I'm sure that if any opportunity does come up in terms of, a new tree or whatever other landscaping improvements that staff sees fit, I'm sure they will recommend that to the applicant. And I'm confident that this project is going to do all it can to help meet our city goals and policies. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. Anna, if you call the question, please.
That motion carries 6-0.
All right. Thank you, Anna. That decision is final unless appealed to the City Council within 7 days. Good luck, gentlemen, and good luck to your congregation. All right. Before we move on, let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break just to stretch our legs. We'll be back in 10 minutes. Thank you. All right, welcome back to the Planning Commission meeting of March 11th, 2024. Call the meeting back into order. And Anna, if you'd please read the title for public hearing item number 2.
Public hearing item number 2, General Plan Amendment PGPA-23-0001 to amend the 2015 to 2035 General Plan Circulation Element by adding a reference to the Costa Mesa Pedestrian Master Plan and revising policies under goals C1 to C12, and reviewed the draft Costa Mesa Pedestrian Master Plan. Please note we have received public comments on this item that have been provided to the commission and made a part of the record. This is a call for any ex parte communications.
All right, thank you, Anna. Starting to my left, Commissioner Klepak.
None.
Commissioner Vivar.
No.
Vice Chair.
What would an ex parte communication be like in this, for this sort of item? Yeah, I've chatted with staff and lots of people about pedestrian safety in general and this plan, and pretty transparent about it. So.
All right, Commissioner Andrade.
None.
Commissioner Rojas.
None.
I do have a couple to report, starting with many conversations with staff, multiple members of staff who are involved in different aspects of the plan. I think the public may note that for most of us up here, we got an iteration of this plan approximately, gosh, was it 8 months ago? So we've been chewing on it for about that long, at least for most of us. I also had, over the course of that time, I believe some substantive discussion with AT, Active Transportation Committee Chairman Ralph Taboda and Flo Martin as well. And I think beyond that, I can't recall anyone else. So with that said, I'll now turn it over to Ms. Rosales and Mr. Atencio to present the item.
Mr. Chair, I'll just kick it off, and then Ms. Rosales will take over. We're happy to be here, finally presenting to you the pedestrian master plan and general plan amendment to incorporate that into our general plan so that we can complete this process. Our presentation will be led by Mr. Brett Atencio Thomas. He's our active transportation coordinator, and with him is our city transportation manager, Ms. Rosales, and we also have our consultant, Rock Miller, in the audience, and he'll be assisting us as needed. With that.
Great, thank you.
Good evening, Honorable Chair, Vice Chair, and Commissioners. Tonight we bring before you the Pedestrian Master Plan with the request to review and recommend approval of the draft Pedestrian Master Plan known as the PMP and an associated general plan amendment to the circulation element to revise policies and recommendations to incorporate recommended policies outlined in the draft Pedestrian Master Plan. As some background, City Council approved an active transportation plan in June of 2018, largely focused on bicycles and specifically a bicycle facilities map. That included or resulted in an amendment to the general plan circulation element to revise the conceptual bicycle master plan and associated policies. Following approval of the active transportation plan, staff secured $125,000 in grant funding from the Southern California Association of Governments to develop a pedestrian master plan, and City Council approved a local match of $75,000 for a pedestrian master plan project in January of 2020. Subsequently, City Council identified strategic objective to present the pedestrian master plan update to the City Council for direction under the council goal to advance environmental sustainability and climate resiliency. The pedestrian master plan provides general plan policies and tools specific to improving the pedestrian experience to support the active transportation plan vision for active transportation. It also expands upon the pedestrian opportunity zones that were developed as a part of the ATP, and it identifies citywide pedestrian programs, a pedestrian improvement toolbox, and policy recommendations to improve the pedestrian environment in Costa Mesa. Specifically, the PMP has 6 objectives. Those are to promote a pedestrian-friendly transportation system in Costa Mesa, to create a safer place to walk, to integrate pedestrian elements into the circulation system and land use planning, to promote a culture of walking, to promote the positive air quality, health, and economic benefits of walking, and to monitor, evaluate, and pursue funding for implementation of the plan. Community engagement played a central role in the development of the draft pedestrian master plan. Community members had an opportunity to participate in plan development via 6 separate walk audits, 3 community workshops, 7 active transportation committee presentations, a project survey both electronically and in person, as well as an online mapping tool. There are 7 components of the pedestrian master plan. The introduction section provides a plan overview and summary of the city's policies and programs. A community engagement section discusses community participation in the development of the pedestrian master plan. An existing conditions section documents planning context to the pedestrian environment. A policy recommendations component outlines policies and recommendations to create a pedestrian-friendly environment for users of all types, ages, and abilities. A pedestrian infrastructure toolbox provides treatment options to be considered for projects. And an infrastructure projects section provides recommendations to help advance the PMP and ATP visions. And an implementation strategy section provides a list of grant opportunities in order to implement the plan. A general plan amendment update to the circulation element policies under goals C1 through C12 is requested in order to ensure that the PMP goals are considered and implemented as private and public projects are approved. And this will add long-term program and policy recommendations that would enhance the pedestrian environment in the city of Costa Mesa. Adoption of the pedestrian master plan and proposed general plan amendment are exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act under sections 15262, 15276, and 15061, subsection B3. In conclusion, the draft pedestrian master plan and proposed policies have been reviewed by the Active Transportation Committee and at a plethora of public workshops and engagement opportunities. The ATC voted to recommend the draft PMP as prepared in June of 2022 and voted to support the draft PMP in December of 2023. Approval of the pedestrian master plan and associated general plan amendment will promote a pedestrian-friendly environment and complete streets network within the city of Costa Mesa. The Active Transportation Committee did provide a letter to the Planning Commission, and in response to that letter, staff can incorporate the 2 documents, namely the Local Road Safety Plan and the Berkeley Safe Trek Complete Streets Safety Assessment for the City of Costa Mesa as appendices to the Pedestrian Master Plan. The pedestrian treatments identified within the Pedestrian Master Plan can also be included as part of the city's ongoing and proposed 5-year capital improvement program. However, due to current staff workload, staff cannot commit to preparing an implementation plan with a 1-year timeline or adding additional walk audits. However, the upcoming Safe Routes to School Action Plan, which we received grant funding for last year, will significantly complement the pedestrian master plan and include walk audits adjacent to schools throughout the community. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission find the project is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, review and recommend approval of the draft pedestrian master plan as recommended by the city's Active Transportation Committee, but without a specific timeline, and recommend to the City Council to approve a general plan amendment to revise the circulation element to include new policies outlined in the PMP. That concludes my presentation, and with that, we are available to answer any questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Thomas. I'm going to kick it over to Vice Chair Toller to start us in the round of questions tonight.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So obviously this is fantastic. We've been waiting for this for a long time. And I think in the history of the city, we've never had a city council and a planning commission so focused on this topic of walkability. And we've made huge strides in the last, 10 years, because it was 2015 that we started the Bikeway and Walkability Committee. So we've come a long way. We have a lot behind us to be proud of, and and this is a huge milestone. Part of me tends to get a little frustrated sometimes when we keep doing plans and plans and plans and plans, and part of me thinks, why don't we spend this energy actually doing what we want to, instead of talking about it, just doing it? So can you help me and everybody else here understand maybe the role of this document, why another plan is useful or necessary?
Vice Chair Toller, I'll start with the answer, and then I'll let my colleagues continue to add to it. One of the main reasons for the pedestrian master plan, or one of the things that can come out of it, is when we apply for grants for actual infrastructure projects. By having a pedestrian master plan, having an active transportation plan, having the local road safety plan, by having a lot of plans, we get more points towards those projects, and that helps us secure major, like millions of dollars worth of projects for infrastructure. So that's a really big benefit of having these plans. Also, the second piece I just want to point out, having the addition of these policies and recommendations into our general plan also enable us to, as projects come along, as development projects come along, to help incorporate those pedestrian elements and tools that are identified in the pedestrian master plan. And with that, Mr. Sethuraman.
Yeah, Mr. Vice Chair, we totally agree with you that, yeah, I mean, we study a lot, and it's important that we also implement. And to that end, we actually started doing the implementation part of it on to some level. For example, when we did the improvements on Placentia, we walked the entire stretch of Placentia with several members of our active transportation committee and our council member Reynolds. So we walked to identify where we can plant trees, for example, so we can improve the overall environment. Same thing with Fairview Road project that we have underway right now between Newport and Fair. Even though, so we used a lot of the information that's in this plan to actually start looking at it from what would the plan call for in addition to what we are already planning to do there. So we are already working on implementing, but approval of the document is a necessary good thing to do, so that as Ms. Rosales mentioned, we can use that for grant application. It's another tool we can use to get grants.
All right, thank you. That was my big, broad question. I have two more technical questions. I'll pass it on. These have to do with the amendments to the circulation element. So that's attachment 4, and those pages are numbered. On that first page, so page 1 of attachment 4, policy C15, that has some added language, so I'll read it real quick. Implement road diets on street segments with excess capacity to enhance bicycle and pedestrian facilities. And we added, for roadways with excess vehicle capacity, consider the reduction of travel lanes and use the reclaimed space for active modes of transportation, including pedestrian and bicycle. So I said this was a technical question. We say excess capacity, do we mean additional number of lanes, or do we mean it in a broader sense? All the lanes are 14 feet wide, for example, but we're not going to reduce the number of lanes. We're just going to tighten up the lanes themselves.
Vice Chair Toller, when we talk about excess capacity, we're talking about the capacity of the roadway to handle traffic volume. So when we have more capacity, for example, 4 lanes, and we have like a small amount of traffic, we necessarily don't need 4 lanes. We could do 2 lanes, and then we have that extra space that we can use for buffer bike lanes or class 4 or multi-use paths, and there's a lot of different ways we can use that for active transportation. So when we have more lanes than what we need for the volume of traffic is what that means.
Okay, so it's number of lanes we're talking about.
That's correct.
Thank you. On the next page, I think I'm good for now. I had another question. I can't find it. It's written down here somewhere, but we'll have plenty of time tonight. Thank you. That's all for now.
All right. Thank you, Vice Chair Toller. Commissioner Vivar.
Yeah, thank you. And Vice Chairman, thank you for starting us off. Thank you for bringing this tonight. I know that Scott and his team, as well as you guys, really made a big effort to bring this tonight and make sure that we were able to finally see this. I know that a lot of us up here have been wanting to see this for a while, and we received the draft of the PMP a while back, as was alluded to earlier. So it's great to finally see this. And I will say I had the privilege of participating in the walk audits, which I think was a great opportunity for city staff and the community to work together to identify some improvement opportunities around the city. And I was also able to participate in the local road safety plan as a stakeholder. So I'm glad that that was something as well that was added to this as an appendix. Ms. Rosales, you mentioned the something about excess capacity and road diets on streets that have excess capacity. Would you be able to point out some streets around the city that you know would meet that criteria? Either streets or like segments or corridors of streets.
Councilmember Vivar, an example of one that we recently completed was Merrimack Way.
Right.
That was a street that had excess capacity, and so we removed a lane in each direction and built cycle tracks is one example. Another example potentially could be Mesa Verde East is another example where it looks like we do have excess capacity and that we do have a CIP project to study that, and that's another potential project.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and in addition, Commissioner Vivar, Fairview Road, that's design is underway right now, where we are considering that same thing, removing one lane and using that. Other examples we already accomplished. Arlington Drive was supposed to be a 4-lane roadway too, and we downgraded Arlington, and now, as you know, we have a bike path on Arlington. Red Hill Avenue was already downgraded. It's supposed to be a 6-lane roadway. We have it's a 4-lane, and it's going to remain a 4-lane. So those are some examples.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I'm glad that you're pointing out these examples, and I'm sure the committee following this will be able to kind of see that and know that we are committed to making sure that we make sure that our streets are accessible to people, and we know that adding capacity in lanes doesn't help with safety at intersections. So I'm glad that we're committed to kind of making sure that we don't have excess capacity or increasing capacity where we don't have to. And Mr. Brettatencio, Thomas, I don't know if you might as well be able to kind of remind me, because it's been a while since I've gone through the entirety of the PMP on some either whether or not this is kind of policy or goals or recommendations on, for example, any kind of street furniture that is added, that it kind of be located on the left side or on the side of the street closest to the, on the part of the sidewalk closest to the street, so as to kind of create a sort of buffer between the vehicle traffic and for the pedestrians travel along the sidewalk, and as well as I know we do this up in the city of LA, but having residential projects have their driveways and access points from residential streets when possible, as opposed to arterial streets when they are corner lots and abut both residential street and arterial street. I don't know if you might be able to speak to some of that, Mr. Brettatencio Thomas.
Commissioner Vivar, there's a few different areas that I can highlight in the proposed policies and recommendations. One is reference to recommendation C-9.8, which currently reads, make commercial and recreational areas more enjoyable for pedestrians by implementing measures such as providing shade, planting trees, eliminating visible parking lots and vacant land, and minimizing long stretches of, and then we added blank building facade, and this has also been added, and orienting new development toward the street where feasible. Also, recommendation C-9.16, this is a new proposed recommendation, which is along commercial corridors, identify opportunities to reduce surface parking and driveways along the pedestrian infrastructure network. Whenever possible, have storefronts face the street to encourage pedestrian traffic.
Yeah.
And Commissioner Vivar, I saw one other one, recommendation C-8.18, which is study the potential to establish transition zones, which is an area which is communicated to motorists that the roadway environment is changing and their travel speeds or behaviors should change as well between major commercial and employment centers and residential areas to better support pedestrian access. So that is a new proposed recommendation from the pedestrian master plan.
Right. Yeah, and I'm glad that we're adding that to the language because, for example, in terms of the driveways, I know this being someone that reviews driveways in the city of LA, we want to limit driveways at arterials because that obviously is a kind of dangerous conflict point when we have a driveway in an arterial. Mr. Thomas as well, I do want to kind of confirm with you, and I believe one of my colleagues had already asked this, but I know that some in the community might be a bit concerned that this PMP doesn't include maybe some particular improvement projects that either they or others in the committee might want to see. But the purpose of the PMP is really not so much to list out particular projects to work on and to kind of realize, but more as a guiding document for development in the city, and in which improvement projects that the committee is looking at now or in the future will be kind of implemented as kind of part of the PMP work that the city is doing. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, Commissioner Vivar. Really, the pedestrian master plan hosts a pedestrian toolbox which showcases tools to increase walkability, right? And safety and comfort, including benefits, design considerations, and the cost estimates for each tool. And that toolbox can be used throughout our capital improvement program as we develop projects. As Public Works Director Seth Rahman mentioned, as we develop projects, this toolbox is used with recent examples along Fairview Road and in upcoming projects also along Adams Avenue and others.
Right. And I know as well that a big part of the PMP is to allow the city to, I guess, to pursue grants for funding some of our capital improvement projects relating to active transportation. So if we were to approve this tonight and it goes to City Council, assuming they don't delay in approving this, how soon would the city be able to begin applying for grants once we do have that PMP?
Yeah, another great question, Commissioner. We regularly apply for grants, and as of right now, we do mention that we have a draft pedestrian master plan. Moving forward, pending approval from council, we would move forward with writing grants saying we have a pedestrian master plan. And specifically, a draft pedestrian master plan, as Mr. Rosales had mentioned, does not score as favorably as a pedestrian master plan, which other cities do have.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Thomas, Mr. Rosales, Mr. Satharaman, and staff for bringing this tonight and for presenting this to myself and my colleagues tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Vivar. Moving along, anyone else? Commissioner Klepak? Okay. Commissioner Andrade?
Yes. You mentioned briefly that the safe routes to school plan will help supplement some of the actions that are looking to be addressed in the walkability here. Can you maybe expand a little bit more on those? What exactly does it include? Is it bus stops, like every single Newport Mesa School District school? How does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question, Commissioner. So, to be clear, the active transportation plan is more prescriptive in nature than the pedestrian master plan. A safe routes to school plan will also be prescriptive in that it'll actually have specific treatments, both adjacent to our Newport Mesa Unified School District campuses within the city of Costa Mesa, as well as on routes accessing those campuses. So we plan with that Safe Routes to School action plan to have conceptual renderings be a part of that plan, which would allow us to later go request funding to further those designs to the point that they're ready for construction.
Does that include, one of the public comments that we got is that that plan, unfortunately, is not inclusive of high school and middle school level. So it's only predominantly like elementary schools and doesn't include bus routes, which seems like it would directly impact, right? Once the kids get off the bus, they're pedestrians.
No, that's for all Newport Mesa Unified School Districts through all grade levels within the community and on all routes to those schools throughout the community. Both adjacent to the campuses and on routes to the campuses.
And Commissioner Andrade, I just also want to point out that we have a grant for the Safe Routes to School Action Plan, and the total project is about $800,000, which is significant. So it'll be a very robust plan with design concepts where we can pursue grant funding to be able to have infrastructure to implement those. As a comparison, the pedestrian master plan was approximately $200,000. So it is 4 times what the pedestrian master plan funding was.
Sounds great. I really appreciate that. I think that's one of the most one of the fun highlights on the school year when we do the bike to school or walk to school events. So having that added support and focus in those areas is greatly appreciated.
All right, is that all, Commissioner? All right, Commissioner Rojas. All right, I'll take a swing at this. I'll bite. I think I'm going to filter some of my questions and observations in the 2 components of this item, one being questions for staff based on the presentation, then later on when it comes time to move it along. So let me just turn some pages. There's something that stood out to me starting on pretty much page 2 and getting fleshed out a bit further in page 3 was staff's argument that this was environmental sustainability. And I couldn't necessarily see the direct connection to it. I could see it being in conjunction with, but it wasn't really something that was directly related how I understand the definition.
So, Mr. Chairman, the goal of environmental sustainability was something that the City Council adopted, and the City Council, as part of developing the goals, and they identified specific items within the sustainability item, they included this one. So while your opinion may be that how is it related, is because Council said this is part of the sustainability, we want to track this one.
Okay, interesting. I think I could see where it would be connected if there were elements that were directly related to sustainability, but it seems like sustainability just kind of rides along, no pun intended, it rides along with, what the work that's being done. So I just didn't see much of the connection. It's nothing on you, it's just something that kind of came up for me.
Mr. Chair, one linkage is as you promote these kind of plans, if you reduce automobile traffic, that reduces greenhouse gases, and that's kind of where the energy sustainability link is. So that's kind.
Yeah, and I think, in considering that, I turned over to page 4 and looking at the 6 bullet points, and honestly, it's just arguing about terminology more than anything. Maybe I'm just feeling feisty tonight. That's all. But with this being a core city council mission to do environmental sustainability, you really don't see it explicitly in those 6 bullet points that follow. So that kind of led me to think that maybe environmental sustainability wasn't tracking as closely with this project as maybe it was hoped. But I'll move things along. Okay. Probably come back to that terminology, that point of discussion in the resolutions later on. Maybe we can move on to the goals, objectives, and policies attachment 4. We'll go page by page. If we go to page 2, policy C-1.17, the red line right at the beginning says, at regular intervals, conduct a study to reevaluate speeds along the city's roadways. What does staff intend with regular intervals? Are we thinking a year, 2 years, as needed? Is there something maybe a little more explicit?
Chair Arith, to answer your question, is staff regularly looks at the speeds on our roadways. One, we look at speeds after a project has been recently constructed, where we did improvements to, maybe we took a lane away in each direction, we added, we narrowed the lanes, different things that we do that we know will encourage slower speeds. So after projects, we do speed surveys to look at if we can reduce the speeds based on the impacts of those projects on speeds. And then 2, we maintain an engineering and traffic speed survey. And in that speed survey, we have every street in the city and document the speed limit and recommendations of those. And there's a new law that recently passed. And as of June 30th of this year, we will have additional flexibility and opportunity to be able to reduce speeds in our cities. For example, safety corridors, which would be corridors listed in our local road safety plan, corridors with high pedestrian and bicycle concentrations as well. So there'll be a lot of opportunities, and we've already been working to engage a consultant and get a consultant on board to start that process now, so that when June 30th comes along, on July 1st, we can implement slower speeds right as soon as possible.
Okay.
And that's something we do regularly.
Yeah, for sure. And that sounds great. I mean, if we need to keep it, listed as at regular intervals, it sounds like there's some promising stuff coming up in June. Thank you. Same page, policy C-1.19. I'll read it. Develop a network of walking paths in different commercial districts and neighborhoods to encourage community members to walk. The walking paths could be artistic, and each path could have its own wayfinding signs and stylistic flair to create a sense of place. I understand exactly what it means. It just seems a little pie in the sky to me, the way that it's worded. Like, could do this, could do that. I think if it was a little bit worded a little bit tighter, I'm not sure if this, the circulation element is the appropriate place to do that, but just it left me more questions, I think. And so I just wanted to point that out. We can revisit that later. If we go to page 4, policy C-2.13, part of the red line. It's funny reading it this way because I feel like I'm reading the New Testament when it's all in red. Explicitly prohibited at regulated right turn movements on red. So let me let me maybe read what came before it. Continue to evaluate and pursue design and operational improvements such as medians, driveway closures, signal synchronization or phasing, prohibited or regulated right turn reds, movements on red, parking restrictions or setbacks, ADA accessibility, et cetera, to improve the efficiency of safety of intersections. And I guess the point I wanted to kind of get into was, what are we using on the data side to infer that certain intersections should be no right turn on red? I mean, is it something that, are we going off of safety data, collision data? What's kind of backing up our ability to start augmenting the right turn on red?
Chair Areth, we do look at collision data with our police department on a regular basis. We meet every other month to review that data, and we look at specifically look at high collision intersections and specifically with pedestrians. So one, we look at collisions. Two, we also look at the volume of pedestrians versus the volume of right turns as well. We look at whether no right turn on red should be implemented or potentially leading pedestrian intervals, which we have implemented over 26 in the past year.
Okay, all right, thank you. If we turn to page 5, policy C-3.8, right at the beginning, this new policy says collaborate with Caltrans, OCTA, and other local agencies to re-envision, et cetera, et cetera. And then explicitly, the future of Newport Boulevard, an area adjacent to 17th and 19th Street for placemaking, bicycle, ped activities, implementing enhanced infrastructure to provide for connectivity, so on and so forth, especially in the east-west direction. That was really explicit, kind of as a city policy that would be held on the books in perpetuity, to have to collaborate with Caltrans, OCTA, and other local agencies. I was wondering, just theoretically, unless there's a reason to include those agencies, why not just say local agencies and take out the OCTA and so forth?
Chair Areth, one of the reasons to keep Caltrans and OCTA listed is collaboration. Newport Boulevard in this area is owned and maintained by Caltrans. So it is in the Caltrans right-of-way, so we definitely need to bring them in to collaborate to try to have them take a look at active transportation improvements in the area. Also, OCTA, they kind of maintain the long-range planning of our streets as well, and they have a master plan of arterial highways, which has to match the cities. The cities has to match theirs, so there's collaboration that needs to be met with OCTA as well.
Okay. And then I guess so by listing Caltrans and OCTA and then subsequently other local agencies, but then being even more explicit about 17th and 19th Street, it's because they oversee those streets, right? So,
yes, Chair, this is similar to the policy that's actually 3.6 also, same thing. It's because of Caltrans and OCTA's involvement on 55. We always had that for 55 and Newport Boulevard.
Okay. All right. I guess that makes sense. Thank you. Flipping pages. Looks like page 9. Policy C-5.13. The old language says require that new development projects improve access to and accommodations for multimodal transportation. And then the new language in here, the red line version, says provide pedestrian access that serves the intensity of use and complements the existing pedestrian network, and whenever feasible, incorporate pedestrian improvements in the public right-of-way as part of the conditions of approval. And I guess this was more of a general question to the planning department vis-a-vis, engineering and AT, was how confident are we that we want to make it an explicit policy to tie development fees into pedestrian improvements, specifically if we have possibly other areas where we want to expend those funds?
I would say, Chair, that we actually already do collaborate with the Transportation Department with these fees specifically. and also with private projects. For example, long before a recent project came before the Planning Commission, the Raising Cane's project just comes to mind. We worked with transportation very closely with what pedestrian improvements might be required, and worked with the applicant and coordinated all of these efforts, and questions like who is going to pay for bus stop fees and different dynamics of how to use fee mitigations and also require specific mitigations based on project development came was spoken to and responded to. And so I don't know if that answers your question specifically, but I will say one of the things I thought about when the director mentioned that, Public Works Director mentioned that they work specifically on incorporating some of these policies into the projects for the capital improvement project lists. We also look at these from a staff perspective to make sure that we're ensuring them to also be incorporated into private projects as well.
Okay. And so in that sense, it sounds like we're codifying an existing relationship and an existing reality. We're just putting it on paper now.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you, directors, plural. Policy, same page, policy C-5.16. It's brand new policy. It says develop a hierarchy of pedestrian classification types linked to the land uses they serve, and an approach to design or redesign pedestrian infrastructure based upon the classification. I think there are several, we may have discussed this in our staff calls before about the ranking and ordering of the priority projects. And it kind of reads along those lines as well in this proposed policy. The hierarchy of the pedestrian classification. Do you have a metric in mind? And I guess the second part of the question, will this classification or proposed classification emphasize some areas and de-emphasize others? Like what are the potential outcomes of exercising this classification?
So Chair, we already have roadway classifications. We have some that are major arterials and primary arterials, and we have, for example, on those, we have the sidewalk widths that vary based on the size of the street. This goes one step further and looks at pedestrian volumes, and where we have concentrations of pedestrians, we want to make sure that they are high-class pedestrian facilities. So this is something that will require some effort from the staff point of view to look at how we can come up with those classifications in the future and work towards implementing them.
Okay. So would you say then that this classification is mostly based on volume of pedestrians?
It should be based on the volume of pedestrians. With that, I just want to mention, as I mentioned, we have a consultant here, Mr. Rockmiller. He's an expert in these things. So if he has any things to chime, I request that that we can bring him on board to discuss.
All right. Thank you. I don't think I have any questions just yet, but I'm really glad you're here. Thank you, sir. If we turn the page 10. And colleagues, thank you for the time, by the way. I know I've kind of had a string of these, but I think we need to talk about it a little bit. Policy C-6.1, old policy with some additional language. Evaluate traffic collision data regularly and identify top collision locations for pedestrians, bicycles, transit, and automobiles in Costa Mesa. And then it talks about the countermeasures of pursuing funding to implement the policy as well. When we discuss safety, what does a policy like this mean for different modes of transportation? So what does this mean for safety for different modes of transportation if we're looking at traffic collision data for all of these different forms? And how would we prioritize certain transportation related measures if we see that it's high automobile collisions versus high pedestrian, accidents and so forth.
Yeah, Chair Arith, when we were reviewing the traffic collisions in the city, we look at all modes. So we look at the pedestrian collisions, we look at bicycle collisions, and we look at vehicle collisions. And we have our police department query that based on mode. So we look at all the top pedestrian collisions in the city, and we look at how we can make improvements to improve safety at each of those locations. We look at not only intersections, top locations, but we also look mid-block as well. We do the same with bicycles and then the same with automobiles. So we look at each one of them and then also the interactions between them as well.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Chair, if I might also add,
yeah.
if you look at the pedestrian master plan on page 43, it does include a heat map of pedestrian collisions, and it goes through a long discussion about the top collision corridors and hot spots, and even down to fatal and severe injury types.
Yeah, yes, it does. I remember making several notes when I read this particular heat map. Yeah, thank you, Director. Quick question on policy C-6.3, just below it. How cumbersome is it for staff to have to create an annual report for City Council in terms of the capital improvement program? Is that a heavy lift?
Chair, we do this on an annual basis.
Okay.
We hear throughout the year from our community, from our Active Transportation Committee, and from our council on various projects, and we compile them. And sometimes we apply for grants, but then on an annual basis we do a CIP program, which will be presented for next year. We'll be presenting at the April study session. So we develop a list of projects, and that includes active transportation.
Okay, all right, thank you. So this sounds like it just codifies something that already exists. Okay. Page 14, policy C-8.4, the new language. Says address areas where the pedestrian infrastructure is disrupted by tree streets, such as buckled sidewalk and sidewalk obstruction. I have a colleague up here in mind when I think about trees. And I'm wondering what is the city's approach that in the event of having to cut out trees, cut out roots, and just remove trees, does the city have a plan in place to replace those trees once we have to uproot them? And what does that look like?
Yes, Chair. So if we are removing a tree because of a safety issue, we do go ahead and remove it, and we plant another tree that does not have that kind of a detrimental invasive root system. So we have other options that we immediately plant in those areas, and then sometimes if we remove a healthy tree for some reason, such as need to expand the roadway or anything in that manner, then we go plant 3-to-1 ratio.
Okay.
At another location. Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. So you said a 3-to-1 ratio.
Yeah.
If it's a large tree replaced by 3 smaller trees, or is that the logic?
So I mean, we try to go as 36-inch box trees where we can. So we try to make sure that they are decent sized trees.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Director. Next page, 15, recommendation C-8.7. Says, review traffic signal locations with prohibited pedestrian crossings and where feasible and appropriate, modify crossings. I was wondering how you're identifying those locations and what would constitute a modification, or what would put into motion a modification of that space.
Yeah, Chair Arith, I'll give you just a really quick example. The Adams Pine Creek intersection currently has only one leg across Adams you can cross, and the other one does not currently have a pedestrian crossing. We look at collisions, and unfortunately there was a fatality at the location without a crosswalk. And we have a project already that's been designed, it's been out to bid, it's gotten council award for construction. So that's a project that we've identified prior to the fatality to have this improvement done. And this is one example of locations where we do this. So it includes a full traffic signal modification to be able to add in that crosswalk.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's a great example. Below, recommendation C-813. It explicitly, in the red version, or the new language, it explicitly calls out the walk and bike to school week events with Newport Mesa Unified. I didn't know how confident we feel about putting that into the circulation element if they decide to go through a rebrand of that program, or if we should just keep it ambiguous and say any transportation related program with the local school district. I don't know if that gets us out of it, but.
Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you for that, Chair. At this point, we're still hosting events through May and in October, which have been nationally known as, in May as Bike to School week or day, and then also in October as Walk to School week or day. Because of that, I think we're confident to leave it as this, and that would cover any rebranding. If we did rebrand it, we would probably most likely rebrand both.
Okay.
And that would be on following whatever the national trend was.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I just didn't know if we wanted to make it ambiguous so that it fits into wherever the program is at any given time. Yes.
Pardon, Chair, can I jump in? I have a follow-up on that
Please.
same. And to the and just to piggyback of what you shared, Newport Mesa is very successful at these. So to the powers that be, if you're listening, I highly encourage more bike to school and walk to school events. They are, again, just kind of reinforce the walkability that our city is striving for, and really educates our kids. So on that recommendation C8 12 or now 13. What's the difference between why a recommendation, not a policy? I see that kind of being toggled back and forth, just for better understanding.
So just, Chair Andrade, a quick background on this one. Many years ago, when we did the active transportation plan, we added goals C7 to C12. And all those objectives and everything under objectives were classified as recommendations by City Council at that time. And then when the bike committee took this over later in 2018, we went through an exercise of saying, we need to change some of these from policies to from recommendations, we want to change it to policies. They looked at it and they considered whether to change all of them. And the committee at that time decided that let's look at some key ones and make them as policies and leave the rest as recommendations. And so the committee went through each, one by one and identified which one should be policy and which one should be recommendation. And that's kind of the background of how this came about.
So then that would be one of my, staying on that same bullet since you were on that chair, if there's an opportunity to have that considered be a policy so that, again, we start young with our youth and encouraging walkability and bikeability. And then within that, I just wanted to clarify, everywhere you're in the document, we say bicycle, but I don't know if it's much to be a stickler. Like, do we need to incorporate e-bike education on some of this and mitigation on their speed? Because I personally have seen accidents where it's an e-bike, just going super fast that winds up getting, and it's normally a kid that is trying to get to school on their e-bike, on their phone, going way over speed that winds up getting themselves in an accident. So I don't know if that it should be maybe incorporated in the right above it policy C8.10 on the police officers' better education and outreach to schools and education on how to properly and safely ride your e-bike in our community?
Commissioner Andrade, actually, in the next, our Active Transportation Committee already heard a draft ordinance that's going to be presented to our City Council in the near future. I think it could be second meeting in April or early May when we'll come to the council. So there is a whole new ordinance that will change our municipal code specific to e-bikes.
Okay.
So I think it's already happening.
It'll capture that.
Yes.
Great. That's all, Chair, on that bullet, on that policy recommendation. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Andrade. That was a good observation. Moving along to page 19, policy C-10.2. It's recommended as a policy to build partnerships with local businesses and community groups to host regular bike and walk tours and other biking and walking related activities that promote biking and walking as a form of physical exercise. Here's my observation. I see exactly what staff wants to do here in having this be a policy, but it almost ties success to another entity's willingness to engage with us. So I don't know if it's a matter if to keep it a policy but change the language that describes it, or make it a recommendation so that it gets us off the hook from having to engage with people where we don't know what the vibe is going to be from one year to the next sometimes. So that's just language there. If we turn the page to page 20, recommendation C-10.9 says plan and install tactical urbanism demonstrations and or quick build projects along corridors, et cetera, et cetera. I know that we've tried this out before at the end of 19th Street. I thought it was really cool. It confused a lot of people to do a roundabout, which seems pretty straightforward to me. You go around it. But I'm wondering if staff has any long-term vision on how to leverage this idea and how much staff time would be dedicated to testing these out, if there's any thought that's been put into it.
Yeah, Chair Arith, great question. The Transportation Division typically gets several speeding complaints throughout the year. We review and evaluate each one of those, and if our findings, if we find that there is a speeding issue, we typically do this very thing, and we test different traffic calming options and countermeasures to slow those speeds. So we do pilot tests. For example, on Meyer Place, we had roundabouts, and we also had medians with delineators. We use more of a temporary measure, and then based on those findings, we'll come back and then implement permanent type traffic solutions.
Okay.
Another example is College Avenue, where we did a temporary installation and tested that as well. And that it did slow speeds. As part of that, we do a community outreach and found that, and we also looked at vehicle classification and found that there was quite a bit of cut-through traffic and very large trucks going down residential streets. So for that one, the final installation was speed cushions, which is like a speed hump, except fire trucks can go through without having to slow down as much, since their tires can fit through the gaps. It's also better for bicyclists as well, because a bicyclist can go through the gaps and they don't have to try to navigate the bump. And we've done this on other streets, Royal Palm as well. And this is something that we typically like to do when we are testing out different types of traffic calming, because there is a big toolbox of what we can do.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Rosales. If we turn to page, and again, thank you, colleagues, for giving me all this time. I know it's a little over the top, but trying to make sure we do something here. Policy C-12.7, it says develop a program to regularly collect and share citywide pedestrian and bicycle count data. Again, what does regularly mean? It's not that I'm not a fan of keeping things ambiguous so that you can step into that space, but I think, I'm just being devil's advocate. I'm trying to argue, what does regular mean? Once a year? Without burdening staff? If it's something that we're already doing, it's just a matter of collating?
Yeah, Chair, Erath, annually would be appropriate, and we typically do this when we're reviewing our traffic impact fee.
Okay. All right, and guess what? I'm all done with my questions. So thank you for your time. Colleagues, do you have any further questions? No? Okay, we'll move things. Yes?
Well, not a question, but again, on page 18, the switch between policy and recommendation. I really love, we see so many, this is recommendation C9.16. A lot of the businesses that we see are obviously lining up in our commercial corridors. So making this a policy as opposed to a recommendation, I think would be great so that applicants, as they're considering to open up businesses here locally or applying for permits, kind of are thinking of that firsthand, that we want to make this business walkable as much as possible.
Okay. All right. I made a note of that, Commissioner Andrade. We can circle back to that when we bring it back up to the dais. So if you could just remind me of that. All right. Anything else? Vice Chair? Okay. All right. I will now open the public hearing, and let's see.
Oh, wow. Just now.
We are taking comments. Yeah. And I don't know if we have an applicant here for this. Don't? I hope not. Let's see. I think just something's missing here. So we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. If anyone in chambers would like to speak to this item, you're welcome to come to either podium. You'll have 3 minutes. At the 1 minute mark, you'll hear a chime, and then you'll be cut off at 3 minutes. If you're on Zoom, you can use the raised hand option, and if you're on telephone, you can press *9. And we'll start out with Ms. Flo Martin. Ms. Martin.
You're looking at a little lady in tennis shoes who walks between 40 to 60 miles a month on our Costa Mesa streets. I've also been a member of the Active Transportation Committee since its inception 9 years ago. I have participated in all the walk audits for the local road safety plan, for the Berkeley Safe Trek, and also for the PMP. Something is missing in the PMP as proposed, and I would like to add an appendix that specifically provides data that would rattle some serious cages in our community. For example, the Federal Highway Administration Guide for Improving Pedestrian Safety at Uncontrolled Crossing Locations. Another example, the Berkeley Safe Trek 2021 report, the traffic collisions and rankings. I looked up the rankings today online for 2021. I would like to see that specific data included in an appendix. Also, I would like to see included Costa Mesa Complete Streets audit results and suggestions, pages 42 to 78, including also Kimley Horn's Costa Mesa report, Appendix A, case studies. In view of the dangerous conditions some of our streets have for pedestrians and the 2 deaths that occurred recently, and hearing from a council member how she was almost run down on her scooter trying to get across the street with the green light, and also my personal experience of being threatened by drivers who run red lights. I would like to see an appendix that seriously rattles some cages and lets people know that they have to wear a swivel head when they walk on our streets. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Martin. All right. Chair Taboda, welcome.
Welcome. Should I go 1 minute or 2 minutes?
You get 3 minutes.
This says 55 seconds.
Oh, really? I just restarted it. Okay, I'm starting at 3 minutes.
Now I got 28 seconds.
I'll restart it again. I promise you've got 3 minutes. And I got a little timer on mine too, Ralph.
I can use my own watch, I guess.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Ralph Taboda. I'm the Chair of the Active Transportation Committee, or the ATC. Appreciate the Commission reviewing and offering your comments and recommendations on the PMP. The committee's letter to the Commission is attachment 5, and I hope you had a chance to read it. As the staff report mentioned, the ATC approved the PMP in June of 22, and we support the Planning Commission approving it. However, as stated in our letter, we believe the PMP can be improved. Specifically, we recommend and believe it is very important to add an implementation plan to the PMP. Staff concurs with the two of our ATC recommendations as outlined on items 1 and 1A in our letter. Our third recommendation, however, is to develop an implementation plan. The ATC is asking you, the Planning Commission, to make your approval conditional on the development of such a plan. The importance of an implementation plan is outlined in Chapter 7 of the PMP. There are many components to consider in order to implement a Costa Mesa's PMP. For example, project priorities, funding, staffing, community input, all come into play. A plan will help integrate all these components and help bring some order to the process. Some specific benefits to an implementation plan. It is a management tool that will help guide staff and other interested groups through the years that it will take to implement a PMP. It is also a measurement tool to status the progress of the implementation. It will provide staff, council, and the Planning Commission, as well as the public, a complete overview of the time frame and cost to implement the PMP. It will provide improved project visibility and transparency during the implementation. I think on the, and what we're looking at is it will provide a guideline, like I said, a timeline and the list of projects. And we're suggesting 12 months from PMP approval to have that implementation plan established. Additional areas of the city need to be reviewed for possible pedestrian improvements, as well as going to take time and effort to put together an implementation plan. That's not going to be done overnight. It's going to take many months, and we suggest the 12 months, for example. I think in the last chart that Mr. Thomas presented, it mentions that staff recommends approving the PMP, but without a timeline, and that's the key here. Without a timeline. We are suggesting a timeline be established. It may be, it's not going to be tomorrow, it's not going to be.
All right, thank you, Chair Taboda. Mr. Martinez, welcome.
Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Commission, thank you. Funding for the pedestrian master plan was first approved in January of 2020 when I was a senior in high school. Now that I'm a senior in college and about to graduate, all I can say is please hurry up and pass this. It's been 4 years and I would really like this to get going. For some actual substantive comments on this, just replace every instance of recommendation with policy. It's just, you have like 4 different things going on here, goals, objective, just replace them. Makes it simpler, makes it easier to read, and you don't have to jump back and forth between policies and recommendations. One thing that I did not see in the circulation element draft, which I think I would like to see, and many other pedestrian advocates would like to see as well, would be the elimination of slip lanes on our roads. They cause a very dangerous right turn movement. We already have banning or prohibiting certain right turns on red for intersections through our city, and I think this would complement that very well. So in circulation element language, that would probably be consider prohibition of slip lanes in future infrastructure projects where feasible, which, you know, my problems with feasibility of a project aside, something to consider. Another thing I would ask for the commission to consider is in policy C1.8, it specifically mentions pursuing a downgrade of 17th Street through the MPAH amendment process of the OCTA. And I would just actually generalize this one to pursue downgrades of I don't know, roads that have excess capacity. As Ms. Rosales mentioned, there are roads that we are trying to reduce lanes on. So stuff like Mesa Verde East or Fairview Road south of Fair are all probably going to have some lanes removed thanks to some amazing active transportation projects. But on the master plan of arterial highways, they are listed as having 4 or 6 lanes when they really shouldn't. So if we can generalize that one so that we can get an MPH amendment, I think some OCTA directors might actually be in favor of that, including our own mayor who is on OCTA. So that's very convenient for us, and I hope that we can get that done. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Martinez. Is there anyone else in chambers who wishes to speak? Danielle? You're the only other. Okay. It's good to see you, by the way. Let's see. Anna, do we have anyone on Zoom or telephone?
Caller ending in 801, you may provide your public comment.
Caller 801.
Hi, can you hear me?
Sure can.
Hi, I'll keep this short and sweet and timely. My name is Michaela Tesser. I'm a Costa Mesa resident and a new member of the Active Transportation Committee. I wanted to voice my support for this item because I believe in the expansion of safer streets for everyone who uses them, especially the most vulnerable users, and I believe that these proposed updates support that. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone else?
Cynthia McDonald, you may provide your public comment.
Ms. McDonald.
Good evening, Commissioners. Cynthia McDonald, Costa Mesa resident and former chair of the ATC. First, I want to say that I fully support the concept of this project. The work plan for the ATC had this item on it for years. So back in, I think it was 2019, I was glad to hear the city had applied for funds from SCAG. We got the grant and the city provided additional funds. Unfortunately, the funds weren't enough to cover everything in the scope of work, or SOW. And that was a part of SCAG's contract that was approved by the city council. But that SOW was subsequently revised to reduce the work performed by the consultant as assisted by the members of the ATC and the public. It was when the ATC received the first draft that I realized the plan didn't align with the SOW approved by the council and that the drafts were following a different SOW to some extent. Through the review process, members of the ATC, including myself, requested changes and expansion of the project. Here we are 2 years since we saw the first draft. I had hoped that during that time that staff would figure out a way to expand the plan to cover more of the city and incorporate more of the needed features and the opportunities that we saw in other PMPs. I also hope that some of the missing work listed in the SOW would be performed. Now, I want to make it clear, I don't have an issue with the work that has actually been done, as I think staff has done the best it can with the funding it received. But to call this a master plan, I just can't do that. I sent you a 3-page list of issues, and I hope you had time to review it so that you might understand my dilemma in sending this to the council. With respect to recommendations, I have never seen that term used in any other city's general plan. That was a purely political move to get the ATP approved. And in terms of this being a document that compels the development of projects, there's needs to be a specific policy that requires that projects be built when the opportunity arises, such as new housing or commercial development nearby. That is a policy that's missing from both the ATP and this draft PMP. Now, revising and expanding the Safe Routes to School is good news, as are the additional reports, but those are only a few of the missing components. Instead of adopting a half-done plan, why not wait until you get the SRS, add that and the other missing information into a more complete document? We've already waited 2 years to get this to you. The city is receiving grants based on the PMP. It is reducing vehicle speeds. So there doesn't seem to be any harm waiting to deliver a better, more complete document to the council. I'd rather not send a document to council that requires an explanation of
Thank you,
why
Cynthia.
it is missing.
Thank you for your time. Anyone else, Anna?
No, there is not, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. All right, I'll now close the public comment portion of the public hearing. And colleagues, do you have any further questions of staff, starting with Commissioner Andrade, looks like? Oh, okay. Yeah, Vice Chair.
Sure, thank you. Well, we heard a lot of ideas, and I would like to hear from maybe a reaction from staff to some of those. So maybe you could help us understand, working backwards, I guess, the incorporation of the safe routes to school. That's going to be a separate plan, and is it an issue that it's not moving forward together with this one?
Vice Chair Toller, the Safe Routes to School Action Plan will be a separate plan, but it will complement the pedestrian master plan. So it'll be an additional tool and be very robust, focused around schools. And as I mentioned earlier, the funding that we have for the Safe Routes to School Action Plan is 4 times the amount of funding that we have for the pedestrian master plan. We're drafting an RFP that'll be out in the streets very soon.
Yeah, Vice Chair Toller, that study, again, like we're working on the RFP process at this time. By the time it goes to council to award the project, we are looking at maybe summer of this year, and then it's at least a year project. So, So you're delaying this adoption for at least a couple of years with that.
Okay. Both Ms. McDonald and David Martinez mentioned the difference between recommendations and policies in our circulation element. Can somebody comment on that?
Yes, so Vice Chair, as I mentioned, this was debated by back then the Bikeway and Walkability Committee at length. So when the opportunity came for considering this again and to see whether we want to modify some of these to be policies, the committee at the time decided that we should focus on some key ones and make them as policies, and that's what you see right now in this document. It's a product of the staff and the committee working together and coming to council with that recommendation.
So some recommendations were upgraded to policy, and some were left behind intentionally.
Intentionally.
And why were they left behind? I guess
they felt that. Some of those recommendations is something that we do anyways. It doesn't need to be, there is no need to kind of think about having an extra benefit of changing them is what kind of, what was being taught us. And they said it's good to have some focused list of policies that advance that particular objective, and sometimes they seem to be redundant. If you look at, it kind of says the same thing in different ways. So they just wanted to highlight it, to pick the ones that are unique and things that they really want to fight for as policies.
Okay. A few more. things that came up in those public comments. Mr. Martinez brought up policy C18, and that's been in there for a while.
Yeah.
In the circulation element, and there are, let's see, it's just one segment of one street, right?
So, yeah, Vice Chair, if you look at policy C14,
yeah. So that's the blanket one that covers
that's a
anything
blanket
else we
one.
could
It
think of.
covers.
Okay.
So we always have this one is more specifically identified because it's a council direction for that particular street, and that's why you see it there.
Okay. Wrapping up, Mr. Taboda and the Active Transportation Committee made a formal recommendation about having a 12-month period in which we would come up with an implementation plan for this. Can I get a reaction to that?
Yeah, so Vice Chair Toller, we discussed this with the committee also. We're not opposed to that. We are opposed to, the only thing we're opposed to is the timeline. If we did not have so many projects on our books, and if we did not have this bike safety education that we started working on, the Safe Route to School, and not to mention other projects, we can dedicate Brett Atensio's time to some of those to develop this implementation plan. It's just the timing. Maybe I wish we didn't have all these projects and we could focus on that implementation plan, but we do have these projects to work on.
So it's staff's opinion that an implementation plan would be an appropriate part of the pedestrian master plan, but 12 months might be a little tight.
That's exactly what we feel.
What time period might be more appropriate? Or would leaving it open be more prudent?
Leaving it open is better because if you specify something, we may get to it in 2 years. If I say 10 years, then it could be too long, so.
Okay. Okay. Last question. Ms. Martin talked about adding a set of appendices to the pedestrian master plan. Does staff think that would have a benefit, give it a little more teeth or effectiveness?
And if I could just jump in real quick, Vice Chair, I wrote down, I believe it was 5 different references that Ms. Martin brought up. I don't know if you had a chance to write all those down as well, so if you can speak to each specifically. Federal highways, controlled crossings being the first one.
Mr. Chair, I'll start and maybe Ms. Rosales can join me on that one. So what we're trying to do as part of this is a general plan amendment to add these specific policies into the document. That's the main goal for this one. A lot of tools that we use are something that we have in our pocket. It doesn't do anything if you add to the plan. We have them as reference anyway for us, and there may be new documents that come down the road that we want to be referencing and including, so considering. So I think the focus is the policies and objectives that are going to be included as part of this this general plan amendment. I think that's what I feel.
Yeah, Chair Arith, we do agree with the local road safety plan that's specific to Costa Mesa, as well as the Berkeley Safe Trek Complete Streets Assessment. Those can be added as appendices in the very Costa Mesa specific. The other references, such as the FHWA pedestrian crossings at unsignalized mid-block locations, we already used that guide when we were evaluating pedestrian crosswalks mid-block. So, and that also gets updated periodically by FHWA. So we would rather keep it as a reference that we use in-house than have to have an expired reference in the report.
Okay. Any thoughts on the Berkeley report for rankings? I don't know the full name of it, but it was, I wrote down Berkeley report ranking.
So the Berkeley Safe Trek Complete Streets report,
It's already in, yeah.
We're good with that one.
And the Kimley Horn case studies?
Yeah, so that's part of the local road safety plan.
Okay. All right. All right. Yeah, Vice Chair, I'll kick it back to you. Sorry to steal your thunder.
No, those were my questions. I just wanted to hear staff's reaction to all those suggestions we heard. That's all I have for now.
Okay. Commissioner Andrade?
Yeah, just a clarifying question. So, Ms. Rosales, you mentioned that the reason why we want to evaluate this, make improvements and recommendations, is so that the city is in a better place to be able to apply for more federal grant, state, whatever, grant opportunities. So is that, and then at the same time, right, we can't put a timeline on it because we don't have enough staff to actually help us implement it. So is that kind of the thought process? Obtain some meaningful grants that will help maybe fund some positions and roles to help implement this? Like, would you foresee that, I don't know, is there some sort of benchmark that we can set, like after X number of dollars would allow us to set forth a timeline on this? Because I think that's what the community is kind of excited to hear, is like, this is great, now when?
Yeah, so Commissioner Andrade, we periodically apply for grants multiple times throughout a year, and we just recently got 3 grants, over $9 million in grant funds for construction, design, and for projects on Adams, 2 projects on Adams and 1 on Fairview. And so, and since we were continually getting funds to design and build infrastructure, and we have these grants, typically those grants also have a timeline where they expire. If we don't start getting the design complete and going to construction, we could lose that funding. So a lot of the priorities of staff are getting these grants completed as we get these projects, and we have a lot of them in-house currently.
So you're saying that, if I can, just to translate, so if I am understanding it correctly, so by having this master plan, you're able to kind of complete them bit by bit, right? Like, as you receive that project, you receive that funding for the project that maybe meets some of the needs here, and it's getting built in phases, so you're kind of canceling some as you go along, as opportunities arise?
Yeah, so Commissioner Andrade, as opportunities arise, we continue to apply for new funds, and having this pedestrian master plan, not just as a draft, but actually having it as an approved plan, helps us leverage and to be able to get more points, to be able to get more grants in. So, for example, even the Safe Routes to School Action Plan that's going to be underway soon, that plan will come up with infrastructure projects. And by having this pedestrian master plan, when that plan is done, we'll get more points by a pedestrian master plan and having those infrastructure projects identified in that plan. So by having it, it helps us continue to score higher to get more grants to do the projects that we're planning and designing, and those projects that are in our CIP, capital improvement plan, that are pedestrian safety related.
So with that in mind, which sounds kind of like, how do you eat an elephant? Bite by bite, right? Because it is such a huge undertaking. Is there maybe an opportunity in the community engagement aspect to be able to share that, okay, now that we have a better version of, or an improved upon version of this walkability plan, since then, these are other projects that help, you know what I mean? Like, to help educate the community on, this is where we've, like you said, scored some points here to help us address the needs of this master plan. It gives your opportunity to kind of incorporate some educational pieces there.
Yes, Commissioner Andrade, as we work with our committee on many aspects of this project, of this agri-transportation, including pedestrian improvements. And as we develop projects, every single project will involve outreach to the community. And yeah, we will be able to share how this plan benefited when we get grants for future projects.
Great. And then I know I had made some, a couple of us now have asked about policy recommendation, and you mentioned there were some like redundancies in many of these. So, I mean, again, to allow us to have greater reach and potential, I think that would be one of the recommendations to make, is to recommend to remove the recommendations, right? And if they kind of cancel each other out, right, I think we can maybe modify those that are duplicitous to kind of simplify the document for an easy read. Yeah, that's what I have, Chair.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Andrade. Anyone else? Commissioner Vivar.
Yeah, now that I've been sitting here and thinking about the local road safety plan, I know that there's a lot of kind of important information in that document as well. I know that a lot of the pedestrian master plan policies and recommendations focus on things like design considerations for projects and the toolbox for making streets safer. But I remember from the local road safety plan, which had a pretty lengthy and data-driven discussion on the data where pedestrians were hit, in some cases killed by vehicles, and I remember that driving under the influence was a big part of that. So I don't know what part of sort of our grant funding or grant opportunities as well might be able to maybe in some cases be used sort of for the enforcement side of things to kind of maybe try to cut down on sort of those kind of DUI problems. And I don't know if there's any data, for example, on whether any kind of particular parts of the city that have, you know, maybe a concentration or over concentration of either kind of state or nationally kind of regulated drugs, kind of how that might play into sort of these locations that might be problem intersections and problem corridors, and how those might relate to land uses. And I think that might be good data to have on hand, especially as this planning commission or future planning commissions as well make land use considerations, especially as it relates to health, welfare, and safety of the community, which is something that we debate a lot about up here. And I think that having data like that would be good. So I don't know if you guys might be able to speak to any of that.
Commissioner Vivar, for your question related to DUIs and grants, I know that our police department gets a grant from OTS, which is the Office of Traffic Safety from the state. They regularly get this grant, which helps fund their DUI checkpoints. And based on information that enforcement gets, they do targeted enforcement in very specific areas where they've seen DUI issues in the past. The police department was also on our stakeholder meeting group when we did the local road safety plan, and we coordinated with PD when that plan was put together, and PD was one of our partners and is aware of those locations as well.
Mm-hmm. Right. And do you think that, I don't know if that, would a map of those locations be in the local road safety plan? Mm-hmm. And if it is, will that then be in the appendix for the public and also for the commissioners to see as they make future land use decisions?
Commissioner Weaver, the accident history is reviewed periodically by staff and in working with our police department. And the problem areas change as, you know, if we address improvements based on enforcement, due to various reasons, the areas tend to change, and you know, we keep you know, the committee and the committee updated on this. You know, I think we are starting to have these meetings where police department staff would come to Active Transportation Committee meeting periodically to talk about these kind of locations, and the data would be available to the public.
All right. Thank you, and Mr. Chair, I think that's it for me.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Vivar. Anyone else? Commissioner Klepak, you have any thoughts? You okay? Good. Okay. All right, staff, thank you very much for getting peppered with all our questions this evening and bearing with us, especially me. I'll now close the public hearing, bring it back up to the dais, and I think before we move things along for a motion, maybe we could have a very quick chit chat between us about how to approach the information that we just heard. I'll go ahead and take a first swing in saying that I'm open to resolving this or continuing it, depending on if anyone thinks that there's more information that's needed. I know we've heard in a couple instances where some folks have said that it's incomplete, that it's not good enough, and it raises questions in my mind. Knowing that this is a tool for us as a city to get money, grant money, do we want this to become to be perfect and be the enemy of the good? Because to me, what I think we're really looking for here is to get a completed plan, right? It's kind of like when I was in school, my PhD advisor and colleagues would say, the best dissertation is a done dissertation, and don't drag it out. I think that we could spend perhaps a lot of time trying to make this absolutely perfect, knowing all the while that it's going to our colleagues at City Council who also have very strong opinions about pedestrian and bicycle safety as well. So my inclination is to say, it's my hope that staff will capture this extremely robust discussion that we've had up here and on the other side, and that a lot of what we've discussed will be reflected in the minutes so that our colleagues on City Council can read those and then make the final decision themselves. So with that said, I'm inclined to move this thing along. I don't think we need to make any strong, heavy-handed recommendations here, and I'm okay with moving this along as long as our thoughts are captured in the minutes. And I'm happy to hear your thoughts. Vice Chair?
Yeah, I'd like to add some more thoughts for the minutes. And I agree, let's move this along. I'd rather have staff using their valuable time getting this ready for council rather than getting it ready to bring it back to us. This is very good, and it's going to be a great leap forward for the city in terms of all these goals that we have. So I have, if I may go first, I have, just as Chair was saying, a whole bunch of little things I'm going to throw out there, see what sticks. I don't need a response to everything. And if my colleagues want to chime in and give a thumbs up, that works too. So I'll try to be quick. Starting with the pedestrian master plan itself, I have one comment on recommendation 2.5. So I'm gonna reference the page numbers that are red. So this is page 60, red page number 60. And this is the big one. Some of my comments will be shorter. Recommendation 2.5, conduct analysis to identify intersections to prohibit or regulate right turn on red movement at intersections with high frequencies of this collision, or of this collision/citation type. Okay, yes, this is good and bad. We do want to explore which intersections are most appropriate for this. This is a good policy for places where people are trying to get across the street a lot, right turn on red. But the criteria should not be tied to how many people are getting hit a year or some metric like that. The criteria should be how many people are trying to get across safely, or where there's a need, some sort of criteria like that that's not tied to collisions. I would want to add to that, maybe it's here, maybe it's in the goals, objectives, and policies of the circulation element, left turn yields. If we're talking about banning right turn on reds at certain intersections with high pedestrian traffic, yield left turns, that's where you have a green ball and you go when there's a gap between the cars, the bikes, and the pedestrians all at the same time, and someone behind you might be hitting the horn and you're sweating, definitely this is the same kind of conversation. I mean, maybe those of us who are good drivers, we don't sweat, but imagine if you're 85 and you're still driving. Imagine if you're 16 and you're nervous. Imagine, that's one. Yeah. Okay, moving on from there, the toolbox. This is page 76. I just have a couple on the toolbox. This is the compromise I think we're making. We're going to do this in one night, but it's going to take a little longer. But we're going to do it in one night. The toolbox has pedestrian lighting. Tall streetlights can provide adequate illumination to permit walking after dark. I don't know if that is, I think we should reconsider that. In my experience, tall streetlights are more appropriate for freeways and auto-oriented places, whereas pedestrian scale lighting means lower streetlights, 12 to 15 feet max. Page 80. Flashing yellow arrows. I don't know. I think that should be scratched in light of my comments on left turn yield left turns. In its place, we have raised crosswalks. I didn't see raised crosswalks anywhere, but I think that could be a potential tool in the toolbox. Page 81, speed feedback signs. In my humble opinion, let's not waste our time and money on those. I don't think those are useful. Page 82, the bottom left blurb, I'll read this real quick. It says excessive traffic volumes. It says traffic volume, high speeds, and traffic noise detract from a positive walking environment. True. However, achieving reductions in traffic is difficult. Agencies who have removed traffic lanes or taken action to discourage traffic have often encountered intense, angry drivers, right? It is generally more successful to increase the separation between pedestrians and motor vehicles, provide buffers throughout the separation, and ensure that convenient crossing locations are available. So that makes me nervous, that kind of admittance. I feel like there's a lot of dissonance in that paragraph with everything else we're saying. I think especially as we add to our population and we talk about reducing capacity and reducing car capacity of our streets and repurposing lanes and things like that, I don't think we need to have this resigned posture towards the problem of the commons being covered in too many cars. And then the last one in the toolbox, the average cost column. So this is a cool, like the little cost estimates. This is just a suggestion for people like me. I think most of us, I have no idea how many square feet are in a crosswalk. So none of these numbers mean anything to me. So if this could be tied to like how much would a crosswalk actually cost us rather than how many dollars per square foot of crosswalk. Those are all my comments for that. And then I'll let somebody else take a turn. I want to go again when we get to the circulation element, and I just have the same amount of things.
All right, gotcha. Anyone else? Moving along. Commissioner Vivar.
Yeah, just two quick comments. Yeah, I think that part of the toolbox as well should be recommendation to have protected left turn where possible, especially for major intersections for an arterial, as having protected left turn as well will reduce the conflicts of vehicles and making those left turns with pedestrians that may be crossing. I think it'll be a bit better for those pedestrians and for the vehicles. And kind of citywide as well to just generally have longer times for crossing, sort of the timing of the pedestrian walk signal to be a bit longer, especially I know this has been kind of implemented. It's already around the city and some of the places, especially near Pomona and 19th and intersections like that, where you have older folks walking. But as well, I think this be a good thing to have near schools and just generally citywide, especially as the city continues to grow. And we've talked about the housing element up here and large development projects that might be coming through some of these housing measures. So that's it for me.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Vivar. Moving along. Okay, good. Okay, I think unless it's captured in the minutes from earlier, I'll just go ahead and make a couple comments for proposed considerations for City Council. If we turn to page 113, 7.2 for the project prioritization, for whatever it's worth, I think that the weighted criteria or the project prioritization criteria in table 7.1 could be recast to be more favorable for the safety category, which is currently weighted at 30%. I would recommend something like a 5 to 10% reduction in the need and equity category and the community support category and put it into the safety category so that project prioritization is safety focused. Not to say that need and equity aren't important or that community support isn't important, but I assume that when the community thinks about what are the best kind of projects for the city to pursue, it's going to be safety related. And I think of Pine Creek and Adams as being kind of indicative of that, unfortunately. I think that's pretty much the center of the pedestrian master plan proposed changes. I think if we go on to the goals, objectives, and policies, I will say that I think it's an interesting idea to make everything a policy. And I can see why some folks might think that, but I think out of necessity, if everything is important, then nothing's important. I think that you kind of have to prioritize time, especially limited time for city staff, and that if or when time frees up, you start to go on and look for the opportunities for what has been recommended rather than an absolute chasing of a policy goal. So in that sense, I am a fan of separating the recommendations and policies and keeping them in place. I recognize that policies C 1.4 and 1.8 are inherently tied after explanation from Director Seth Rahman. I would recommend working the language a little bit in policy C 1.19, and it's fine to keep it a policy. Based on previous discussion of policy C-3.8, I'm going to say that I think it's better to just keep things not ambiguous or vague, but to make it as generalized as possible so that we can step into a definition without over-explaining certain things. So, I mean, I'm not picking on policy C 3.8. It's more just the more definition we have in it, the tighter we have to hold to it. So if other agencies happen to come up, then we can't really fit it into that definition, at least as far as a policy goes. I don't think there's any potential changes with policy C 5.16. We had substantive discussion on that this is based on volume. That would just be prepared when it goes on to council. Let's see. Policy C 8.4 on page 14, we discussed tree replanting and root route buckling up sidewalks and serving as sidewalk obstructions. I think it might be worthwhile for the city council to consider planting more trees than what the current minimum requirement is. If we are in fact a tree city, and I'm very happy that we are, I participated in our tree planting last year and it was great. I think that if we do have the space and the time and we have a preferred list of trees, that we might up that number if we do in fact cut some trees down. And I think our Parks Commission would be pretty happy about that too. I'm looking at page 15, recommendation C 8.7. I recommend that it stay a recommendation, but just to possibly rework the phrasing a little bit. And in terms of the where feasible and appropriate, modify crossings to maybe have it be slightly more explicit, but I'm not going to force it. It's just a consideration. I would, in recognition of Commissioner Andrade's previous comment on page 18, it's recommendation C 9.16. Recognize that Commissioner Andrade thought to make this a policy, and it reads, along commercial corridors, identify opportunities to reduce surface parking and driveways along the pedestrian infrastructure network. Whenever possible, have storefronts face the street to encourage pedestrian traffic. Seems benign enough and makes sense to have that kind of orientation with our businesses. I just don't know what the potential impact is to have this be a policy versus a recommendation. So, I mean, if I had to split hairs, I would say keep it a recommendation until it can be further explained, but maybe to explore the possibility of, like Commissioner Andrade said, making it a policy. Policy C-10.3 on page 19. It says build partnerships with local businesses. We discussed this. I would recommend downgrading, or just not downgrading, augmenting this from a policy to a recommendation. I don't want to force the issue of having to have local businesses participate in this. And that's about it for me. Anyone else? Vice Chair.
I'm going to do the same thing. I don't have that many. I think I have 8. Policy C16 on page 1. Encourage the conversion of excess on-street parking spaces. I think it would be worth striking the word excess. That's ambiguous. What do we mean by that? If we need expanded sidewalks or gathering spaces or landscaping, or I think bike lanes could be added there. So it would read something like encourage the conversion of on-street parking spaces for expanded sidewalk, gathering spaces, landscaping, or bike lanes. Policy C19 on the next page. It says implement traffic calming measures that discourage speeding and cut through traffic on residential streets. If we were to add 3 words in there, implement traffic calming measures that discourage speeding on all streets and cut through traffic on residential streets. That'd be more specific. Policy C112 on the same page. Improve through traffic flow. See, there's a lot of little nuggets of language in here that are just code. We all know what that means. And it doesn't necessarily have to be read that way to like widen the street or get the cars to go faster. So if we were to just modify the language a little bit, something like maximize the efficiency of, so that it can be read in different ways. And you know, some of these comments are kind of global. There might be other opportunities for that. I would request that staff go through and wherever we have the phrase "where feasible," just ask, are we are we holding back when it's not time to be holding back? We have a really favorable community and council and planning commission, so maybe we could strike some "where feasibles." Also, if we look through and find the word improvement, we all know what improvements are, right? And those improvements are often at odds with a lot of these policies and recommendations. So I would encourage staff to go through and consider revising some of that language. Policy C22 on page 3, avoid creation of frequent driveways for new development, access, and active pedestrian areas that create conflict points between pedestrians and vehicles. That's great. I wonder if we could be a little more specific because we have these pedestrian opportunity zones, and maybe something like the prohibition of obviously auto-oriented uses like drive-throughs, whether they're for fast food or for car washes or something else in the pedestrian opportunity zones. I think that would be appropriate and consistent with everything else in here. Page 4, policy C211, investigate all operational measures, including the use of one-way streets to improve traffic circulation and to minimize congestion for all travel modes. One-way streets could be added to. Maybe there's other things. I'm thinking diverters or modal filters, things that we already have in the city and are successful. Just got a couple more. Okay, page 8, jumping way down, policy C5.7. This is a question. Require dedication of right-of-way in an equitable manner for development that increases the intensity of land use. So this is straight out of the 1960s. And I wonder if it's still appropriate here or if it's being crowded out by these new policies. That's an open question. We all know what this means. That's back when a new development went in and a whole bunch new lanes, turn lanes. The street was widened, the sidewalk was narrowed. So I feel that may be crowded out, and if it's left in there, it's causing internal dissonance and conflict. I think I have one more. Okay, I think I have two more. Page 14. Actually, this isn't on a page. Goal C8, create a safer place to walk and ride a bicycle. I don't think we have anything in here on slip lanes, and we have a handful of slip lanes in the city. And as we're doing this pedestrian master plan and amending the circulation element, we should have something in there about getting rid of our slip lanes. That's what cities are doing where they're serious about this topic. Last one, recommendation C8 on page 15. Utilize the city's bicycle-mounted patrol officer program to educate and enforce pedestrian and bicycle user violations, not necessarily to punish, but to correct. So I ride my bike with my kids to school every day, and the ones causing the danger are not on foot or on bike. 98% of the time, they're the ones in the Escalades and the other SUVs on their phones. So I think now is the time to correct this language, utilize the city's bicycle patrol. I don't know if we want to get this around school zones, but instead of enforce pedestrian and bicycle user violations, let's just generalize it, traffic for all transit modes, something like that. Traffic violations for all transit modes. Enforce the rules of the road, whoever the violators are. Because I do think, especially during pickup and drop-off, bicycle-mounted patrol officers would be a huge help in enforcing traffic laws by drivers. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Very thoughtful. Anyone else? Commissioner Vivar.
Yeah, I'd like to express some comments myself. In terms of the feasibility, I think I disagree with Vice Chairman. I think that language should be in there because field conditions sometimes wouldn't allow for a particular policy or design consideration to be implemented. And I think that having that word feasibility in there gives the city latitude to be able to implement or to have an applicant of a project implement or not implement something, and the city itself just judging kind of what based on what is or wouldn't be possible. And let's see, he mentioned something C33 or something like that about the driveways. I would recommend putting language in there about having any residential projects that have access to more than one street to take their main access, or to take all their access from the residential street or the lower classification street, so that we can avoid any driveways at arterial streets, whether that's an entirely new driveway or just an existing driveway that for a new land use needs to be considered as a new driveway, and sealing off those driveways along arterials when possible, and residential projects especially.
If I could, Commissioner Vivar, just for the record, I'm reading policy C 2.2, avoid creation of frequent driveways for new development access. Is that the one? In active pedestrian areas that create conflict
Yes.
points between
Yeah.
pedestrians and vehicles. Okay.
Yeah, I
Just
think
want that noted that was the policy.
Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, regarding the sort of enforcement thing, I agree that sort of pedestrians and bicyclists aren't always, the problem. I mean, sometimes they are. Sometimes people will just run out onto the street, and obviously that can create a problem, an accident. But especially, I think, with enforcing the kind of the traffic rules around intersections, because I think that's where a lot of the kind of issues happen, and just people wanting to, run through there as quickly as possible. So making sure that we're making intersections safer, whether design or enforcement or any other considerations. And that's it for me.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Vivar. Anyone else? Commissioner Andrade?
Yeah, I think it would be, we both the chair, co-chair had a very long list of modifications on switching recommendations to policy. I think it's worthwhile to maybe leaving that open-ended, because otherwise, it's worthwhile going line by line and seeing which recommendations actually are worthwhile turning into policies. So allowing city council and staff to carefully review and maybe remove some of the duplicity, like, for example, recommendation C8.15, encourage and empower citizens to report and maintenance issues that impact, pedestrians, potholes, sidewalks. We already do that, right? We have our new website, our new app that does that. So that's a done, right? The next one is establish procedures for responding to citizens' reports in a timely manner. From my experience, every time I report something, it tends to be addressed quite promptly, at least when I go back and check. So I think it's an opportunity to maybe leave it open-ended for city council to take a closer look and leave it open, because otherwise I think each commissioner can go down the line, down their favorite pet projects and change sit here and make the recommendation to switch whatever their preferred topics or interests are to a policy, right? Because otherwise I can go down through this and give you all the ones that are related to schools, because that's where I spend most of my time and at my daughter's elementary school. So just wanted to kind of offer that.
Yeah.
Or unless you want to hear all my recommendations of switching recommendations.
Happy to hear all your recommendations.
Very quickly, on page 12 of the circulation element, C 7.11, bicycle projects that connect local facilities and neighborhoods to major bicycle corridors. I think it makes sense. We have great bike paths already that exist. Now connecting them to actually make some sense. C.14, 7.14, favorable opportunities to remove parking to accommodate bicycle lanes. Again, favorable opportunities to remove parking. Again, where we want to be a walkable city, sometimes I see most empty parking lots more than anything, and if it can be turned into a welcoming walking path, that's even better. On page 13, 7.25, work with OCTA to maximize bicycle amenities such as bus stops. I mean, that already seems like it's incorporated in here, but making it a policy. Right below it, 7.28, prioritizing schools with the highest auto traffic volume during peak hours and insufficient parking for staff and partners. That's a must. I hope that this one for sure, I think there's a need to make this a policy, because there's, again, like you've heard a lot of us talk about, pickup and drop-off situations are quite hectic. So prioritizing in those schools, I know that there's a couple of New Promesa schools that are in that space. I already mentioned it earlier, 8.13, turning that into a policy on page 15. Again, partnership with the schools, and encouraging the education. Somewhere over here, there was something about bike rodeos with police officers into schools. I think if we, again, start with our youth and educating on what's appropriate on how to drive safely on our streets so that they are not oh, that's over here. Excuse me, page 16. 8.21, encourage schools to develop and provide. Well, maybe that's more, I mean, I think the schools are open and available and welcome every opportunity. So maybe that role should lie, I don't know if on the police department or local businesses to help and educate, because I know schools are always welcome to bring in every opportunity to educate the littles. Yeah, those are just a few. And again, I think it's worthwhile for City Council to look at the recommendations and determine where there's an opportunity for a policy, switch of policy. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Andrade. Is that all? Okay. Anyone else? All right. So let's move things along. Go ahead and make a motion to find that the project is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act CEQA pursuant to CEQA guidelines section 15262, feasibility and planning studies, 15276, transportation improvement programs, and 15061B3, common sense exemption, and recommend to the City Council to approve a draft pedestrian master plan as recommended by the city's active transportation committee, with also noting the extensive minutes to accompany their agenda as well when it goes on to them. And recommend to the City Council to approve General Plan Amendment PGPA 23-0001, amending the circulation element to revise and include new policies outlined in the pedestrian master plan. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Vivar. I'll start off by saying really proud of all of us for weighing in on this. I know that this was always going to be a late item. It was always going to take a lot of time. So I got my naps in today. But joking aside, I think everyone made some really astute, very fine recommendations. I think we've sent enough thought-provoking information along to City Council so that they can make the final recommendations. I think we've flagged a few things that are of particular interest to us, whether we overlap on those policies or not, that they could actually weigh those things out and craft it in the end. I'm glad that we got through it tonight, and I'm extremely excited to actually see this go on the books, so that we can say we have a done plan rather than a draft plan. And I think that was the goal all along. So that's my comment. Commissioner Vivar.
Yeah, I just wanted to, again, thank staff. I know I mentioned this earlier, Scott, and your staff, and Mrs. Thuraman, Ms. Rosales, Mr. Thomas, for bringing this tonight. And for Council Member Arliss Reynolds as well for pushing this along down the pipeline to get to us. I'm glad I was able to participate in this before I am no longer up here on the commission. I care very deeply about active transportation and the various issues surrounding kind of design and planning considerations of projects and how those relate to pedestrian safety. So I'm glad I was able to participate in this. And I think similarly to discussions we had with the inclusionary housing ordinance, I think there can be a tendency to kind of go crazy with the details and kind of try to dissect every single little piece of these plans and whatnot. But I think that, we shouldn't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And I think that this plan that we're sending off to the PMP that we're sending off to the city council is in good shape. And I'm grateful as well for those of the active transportation committee that were able to make it tonight to give their comments and suggestions and recommendations to us. So thank you for your participation. And I'm looking forward to the city council finally reviewing this and for this to finally be part of the part of our general our city's plans and ordinances. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Rivar. Commissioner Klepak, any thoughts? Okay. Commissioner Rojas, any thoughts? Commissioner Andrade? Good. Vice Chair?
I've said enough.
You said it. All right, thank you, everyone. Anna, if we could call the question, please.
That motion carries 6-0.
All right, good job, everyone. We're like, 2 for 2 tonight. This is great. That decision is final unless appealed to the City Council within 7 days. This brings us to old business, new business. I see neither, and we'll move on to departmental reports, starting with Mr. Yang.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No comments from the Public Works Department. Thank you.
Okay.
Back to the chair.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for your patience. Director Dropkin.
Nothing tonight.
Okay. City Attorney, Mr. Preziosi.
Nothing this evening, Chair Earth.
All right. I'll now adjourn the meeting. Good job, everyone. Thank you.